Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Chud Watch. How are you all doing? I hope you're having a wonderful end to your weekend or start to your week, depending on how you think about Sunday. My chair doesn't want to go down. Cool. How's everyone doing? Good, I hope. Let's see what's going on. Hello, everyone on YouTube. We are Girl46, Nora Arcadia, Ken Shaw, how's it going? Chapomon, welcome. Over on Twitch, we have a hype train. Let's see, 80% to level 1. Aaliyah Explores with 33 months says, hi all. Dr. Worm with 33 months says, the magic Freemason number. Ooh, twice in a row, too. It means something. Fenekagami with 100 says, Doyle bashing, let's go. It's the new national pastime. Aaliyah Explorers, thanks for gifting a sub. Starry Night with a 25 stream streak, very cool. Marusama with a 7 stream streak. And Bumble Homestead with 200 bits says, watching Hannah and making tacos. I hope your tacos are delicious. Miss Quilanius with 30 months says, big 3-0 in another 30 months. This sub will be old enough for kindergarten. I remember the day of their birth. I don't. I have a lot of sub babies, I'm sorry. No one who has a sub baby with me is monogamous other than Baha. She's the exception. I take care of all of our sub babies. Anyway. 12% to level 2, well, that's happening. Let's do some Chud hors d'oeuvres. Let's do some little mini bits of Chud stuff before we get to the John Doyle stuff, shall we? The sub-babies are fine. In the sub-baby world, there are ample social services. I'm sure everyone saw this, but of course, Trump apparently doesn't know how magnets work. This is low-hanging fruit, but he is one of the front runners for president, so, like, I think it equals out. It's not punching down if they're almost the president again.
They had a
Hold on, I gotta turn this stuff up.
was big cost overrun.
1 second. I know people are gonna want to send the ICP clip. We get it. Fucking magnets, how do they work?
They had an almost $1 billion cost overrun on the magnetic elevators. Think of it, magnets. Now, all I know about magnets is this. Give me a glass of water. Let me drop it on the magnets. That's the end of the magnets. Why didn't they use John Deere? Why didn't they bring in the John Deere people? Do you like John Deere? I like John Deere.
He seems to think that magnets cease functioning if they're suspended in water. That's not a thing. I don't know if his brain is confusing it because electromagnetism, and if you put, like, electrical circuits underwater, they can short out. I don't know. I don't know. The machinations of his inner mind are an enigma. Mirusama says, don't forget about your sub-bunnies. That's true. Very true. 13% to level 2 on the hype train. Hannah's a quiverful streamer. I have to make sure that all the Hannah sub-babies grow up to conquer America with our Hannah nationalism.
The timelines have begun to split. This is a really important message. Please pull up a chair and listen in. You've heard me talk before about the 2 timelines that were running in parallel.
Just 2? That's a little weird. There's multiple timelines, but not like infinite. There's 2. That feels weird to me. That feels weirder than infinite universes, that there's specifically 2? Which one's the better one? Probably the one we're in, right?
3D and 5D. I've made lots of content about this, and they were running in parallel for a while. These 2 timelines have just begun to split, and I want to talk to you about some stuff that happened to me over sort of December, and that's been happening over the recent weeks, and perhaps this will resonate. And listen to this video till the end because it's really important. Now, if I go back 6 months, I remember around 6 months ago, I've got this over the horizon.
Crisis on 2 Earths. Is Earth 2 Hannah a murderer? Like, is it somehow Earth 2 Hannah my dad, but in a universe where I died and he adopted deadly violence for justice?
and radar.
Probably not.
And I was able to look forward and actually engage mentally with what's going to be on that 3D timeline. So I know what's going to be on that 3D timeline is, you know, it's going to be total control by the governments, it's going to be CBDCs, it's going to be people...
I feel like this music doesn't fit with the prognostication he's doing.
Sort of in these 15-minute cities and you know, it's going to be...
Like, the message is very apocalyptic and the soundtrack is very Rainforest Cafe.
Sort of total control, the people who are on that timeline. And then you've got in parallel this other timeline, which...
My dad is a piece of shit in all timelines. That's probably true. Meek with 50 bits says Earth 2 Hannah is a chud in the same vein as Raging Rob. Oh boy. That's a scary timeline. Dodge that bullet.
Is this new Earth and it's all super positive. And...
Prognostication, that's a big word. Are you bullying me on stream now? Stromboli says, no, Hannah, in the other timeline we all wear cowboy and cowgirl hats. That is all. I understood that reference. Fenekagami says, since we're talking about Doyle, I want to remind everyone that Hunter Avalone and his wife were nearly killed by a far-right extremist. People like John Doyle have mocked them openly about this. So, if you want to do good and piss off Doyle at the same time, here's the link for Holly's GoFundMe. There it is. Check it out. Yeah, that's a scary situation.
Up until about sort of 6 months ago, I was able to engage with that and I was able to sort of feel how that sort of 3D timeline was going to be. And when I look at that 3D timeline now, although I'm aware of what's going to happen, it's almost as if I can't feel it, I can't engage it with it. So as much as I know that on that timeline there's going to be CBDCs that are going to be coming and people are going to be in 15-minute cities, people are going to be on UBI, people are going to be controlled, not able to travel.
He's decided that UBI is a bad thing, by the way. Tea with Goblins says, two divergent timelines, or as the great Terry Pratchett would say, sometimes we make decisions that cause the trousers of time to bifurcate. Which pant leg will you end up in?
And things like this. Although I'm aware of it, I can't engage with it. I can't feel it almost. And it's almost like emotionally not being able to...
This just feels like the dimensional merge with extra steps. Choking Ouroboros, thanks for 29 months.
Trump. We've heard that Trump has been taking money from foreign governments. Oh! Well, no. The money came from foreigners staying at Trump hotels. However, when Trump became president, he transferred ownership of the hotels to his sons.
Did that ever get confirmed that that legally happened? Like, I genuinely don't remember. I know he said that happened, and there was a whole thing about the papers that he shows at that, like, event. The pages were blank, but that doesn't mean it didn't necessarily happen. Either way, it's certainly a gray area, but, like, I don't think that what you're saying is 100% true. He didn't? Yeah, kind of figured.
And after that money was collected, do you know what Trump and his sons did with that money?
Coke?
Well, they didn't go out and buy hookers and smoke crack.
You don't know that. You can't disprove a negative.
Or sex traffic girls.
Again, I don't know. I don't know about that one. I'd put an asterisk. Like, I understand what he's doing here. He's doing a whataboutism. He's trying to contrast his idea of Trump with his idea of Joe Biden, and presumably some QAnon ideas about, like, Democrats that are satanic sex trafficker types. But, like, that doesn't work here, because we know that Trump knew Jeffrey Epstein and, like, hung out with him. I just don't think it works. It's not helping.
They donated.
Hats off. What do you want me to wear? The Langren?
Those millions that they...
Boxy. Yes, thank you for the reminder. There we go. She, her Boxy today.
Made to the U.S. Treasury. Yes, that's the big scandal that they're trying to, you know, they always accuse Trump of the shit they've been doing. But yeah, that's the scandal.
Projecting about
they
projecting.
Collected a few million from foreigners staying at their hotels that
Bittergren, thanks for 37 months.
Trump no longer owned. And they took the money and sent it directly back to the U.S. Treasury.
Don't know where the claim about the Treasury is coming from. I have to read about the whole thing. Bittergrin. I read that one. We have a hydrate, though. I actually need to get more water. 1 second. Let me get more water. We'll do a couple more short things, and then we'll jump right in to the John Doyle stuff. Hydrate. What was the one I wanted to show? Some stuff from Right Wing Watch for sure. Oh, this is kind of funny.
We need more of what happened yesterday, not less, and do not let the
This was the day after January 6th.
We need more of what happened yesterday, not less, and do not let the media brainwash you into thinking yesterday was some bad or evil or shameful thing. When I look at the images of what happened in the videos, because I was on the ground and I saw what happened and what we went through, I am proud. I've never felt more pride in my heart and soul than yesterday, and by seeing these images.
That's a shame.
And you should be proud too. And if you're not, then you were never a real patriot, and you were never down for the cause and never wanted.
If being a patriot is what you are, I don't want to be that. Thank you. Fenakagami says, don't you just love how all the people fearmonger about Biden being in the CCP's back pocket when Trump openly fawns over Xi Jinping, Putin, the Saudis, and North Korea? And he has taken money from most of these groups in far higher numbers than they're ever accused Joe of. Right-wing thought, this is only in my experience, functions a lot like conspiratorial thought, broadly. And this is, of course, a situation of, I look at conspiracies a lot, so of course I'm going to see that in other things, you know? If you start acting like a hammer, everything will look like a nail. I look at conspiracies, so I see conspiracies in everything, ironically enough. So I'm going to look into things in that perspective, but it seems like facts are subordinate to messaging in a lot of right-wing rhetoric. Like, what is important is the end point and the ideal to them that includes, like, strict, what they consider natural hierarchies, and facts are subservient to the rhetoric that gets them to that point, if that makes sense. But, whatever. Oh, this was horrifying. Did you see this? Trump unironically posted this to his Truth Social account. Someone else made it, this Dilly meme team, but Trump posted it to his Truth Social.
And on June 14th, 1946, God looked down on his planned paradise and said, I need a caretaker. So God gave us Trump. God said, I need somebody willing to get up before dawn, fix this country, work all day, fight the Marxists, eat supper, then go to the Oval Office and stay past midnight at a meeting of the heads of state. So God made Trump. I need somebody with arms, strong enough to rustle the deep state, and yet gentle enough to deliver his own grandchild. Somebody
What do you even say about this? If you put this in Starship Troopers, it would be unsubtle. Logarth says, on the subject of January 6th, check the memes channel on Discord for my favorite January 6th meme. I'll check it out later.
to ruffle the feathers, tame cantankerous World Economic Forum, come home hungry, have to wait until the First Lady is done with lunch with friends, then tell the ladies to be sure and come back real soon, and mean it. So God gave us Trump. I need somebody who can shape an axe but wield a sword, who had the courage to step foot in North Korea.
The courage! That's certainly a way of describing it. Humble Homestead says, get up before dawn, watch Fox and Friends, rant on social media, go golfing. And Avant-Garde Nerd, to deliver his own grandchildren. Why? It's hearkening back to some, like, never-existing golden age. Americana. Think, like, why am I blanking on his name? The famous, like, Americana posters and that idea, the Leave It to Beaver, that ideal of, like, a patriarchal head of a family that is a benevolent, like, dictator, basically, that has the best interest of his family in mind. Norman Rockwell, yes. Like fascist Norman Rockwell. Yes. That's what it is. It's signaling towards that sort of ideal. Like, he will go and do all the work, but then he also can deliver his grandchild. It's almost like Robert Heinlein's idea of the competent man. If anyone's familiar with the competent man in a Heinlein, like, perspective. Like that. Hydrate. Avant-Gardener says, I understand, but one, he would never, and two, why would you write these words? Propaganda. Finikagami says, also, really love how right-wingers claim the media lied about January 6th, when most of the incriminating footage from January 6th comes from the MAGA idiots' own live streams. I'm convinced part of the denial of January 6th being MAGA comes from their need to feel like badasses, since it failed, and therefore demonstrates they can't easily take over the government. Clearly they didn't do that failure. It serves several purposes. I'd imagine that's one of them, is that it's like, oh no, we couldn't have failed that badly, to some people, but also it helps them shield from criticism of their ideas if they're able to try and disassociate from ideas that clearly led to violence. And attempts at continued violence.
Who can make money from the tar of the sand, turn liquid to gold, who understands the difference between tariffs and inflation, will finish his 40-hour week by...
It's not an impressive feat to know the difference between tariffs and inflation. Those are two very different things.
Tuesday noon, but then put in another 72 hours. So God made Trump. God had to have somebody willing to go into the den of vipers, call out the fake news for their tongues as sharp as a serpent's. The poison of vipers is on their lips, and yet stop. So God made Trump. God said, I need somebody who will be strong and courageous, who will not be afraid or terrified of the wolves when they attack, a man who cares for the flock, a shepherd to mankind who won't ever leave nor forsake them. I need the most diligent worker to follow the path and remain strong in faith and know the belief of God and country, somebody who's willing to drill, bring back manufacturing and American jobs, farm the lands, secure our borders, build our military.
America's history of being a powerhouse in manufacturing during most of the, like, mid to mid-late 20th century was due to material factors after World War II, where every other country on the earth, pretty much, after being decimated by World War II, still needed things to rebuild their countries. So United States, being an industrial area with a bunch of workers and not much damage, pretty much the only damage on American soil during World War II was during Pearl Harbor. So basically the world were captive consumers and the United States were the only people able to manufacture things. The idea that the United States being the manufacturing powerhouse of the world is some sort of natural state that you can just return to kind of belies a lack of understanding of why that situation happened in the first place. It wasn't just that America was super great at making things. It was that literally every other industrialized country in the world had been dealing with war on its shores for years. I don't know how to deal with arguments when they're entirely based on fiction.
Fight
Ultra Undying, thanks for 15 months, says, woohoo, 15 months.
the system all day and finish a hard week's work, by attending church on Sunday, and then his oldest...
To be clear, I also want to say, as a nuanced argument, that doesn't mean things weren't made worse by trade agreements that allowed capitalists to move manufacturing to countries with really cheap labor to exploit people from those countries. I'm just saying the argument they are making is lacking in understanding of the concept overall. But there is nuance to the situation as well.
Son turns and says, "Dad, let's make America great again. Dad, let's build back a country to be the envy of the world again." So God made Trump.
Jesus. Jay Rodimus says, "Do you think we'll see the end of the Republican Party in our lifetime? Their grasps for relevance are getting more and more desperate and costly. I don't know, it feels like we're on the verge of some kind of drastic shift." I think it's more likely that they drastically shift rhetoric than they actually fade away completely. That's not to say it's impossible, it's happened before. I just think under our first past the post system, it becomes nearly impossible for a third party to grow organically, because anytime they are part of an election, they're going to lose unless it's like a blowout and they win. So it sort of becomes easier for some other interests or other parts of the party with different beliefs step forward and become the leadership in the party and sort of wear its skin with different political beliefs than it makes sense to start your own thing from scratch. I don't know, though. Benekagami says, "I more and more see how much MAGA is largely made up of active liars and not just dupes. The constant flip-flops over the way they talk about January 6th specifically is proof that they're either cult victims or they know to an extent what they're doing, and honestly, as time goes on, I'm convinced more and more of them are increasingly becoming the latter." Tea Time Tea with 50 bits says they want a Cincinnatus, a person who became a dictator because he had to, and went back to farming after his work was done. Even that historical figure is mostly legend. Doodle Stargazer says, "No, Don Jr. said, 'Dad, need money for Coke, thanks.'" Funny. Alright, we can probably jump back to what this thing is all about. Let's check the framing. That should do it. You have to refresh your desire for your favorite Grinch. Oh, God. I do have this saved, but John Doyle calls, so we have to do his. Alright, so it's been a while since Doyle has posted, not quite as long as it has been between his other posts, so maybe he'll be coming back to post content more often. Either way, let's jump into it. This is going to be about surrogacy, in particular, I think surrogacy of gay couples. I think this is going to have to deal with the recent instigator of all of this discourse, which is Shane Dawson, and Shane Dawson's husband did a surrogacy. Now, this is just my personal opinion. I think Shane Dawson sucks, is a bad person, and is probably going to be a really irresponsible bad parent. But that has no bearing broadly on all queer people, or anyone else other than him. I have a feeling John Doyle's going to, at least a little bit, try and say Shane Dawson's irresponsible, therefore broadly, you know, there should be more vetting. But again, he's going to use it rhetorically to try and talk about things that have nothing to do with Shane Dawson and husband's bad behavior anyway. So let's go.
YouTuber Shane Dawson and his partner have just received twin baby boys through surrogacy after having announced that they were going through the process several months ago. And of course, there was lots of excitement, lots of support in the replies to these announcements on social media, even despite Shane Dawson's, we'll say, interesting history of comments about children, which we'll get into in a little bit here. But
John, most people who know about Shane Dawson, I think, are pretty much in the camp that, oh my god, this guy is a kid, that sucks. Like, people are aware of this. Most people, I think, who are aware of Shane Dawson think he's pretty cringe, think he's a weird influencer that gives people who do internet stuff a bad name, because frankly, I think he's a creep. I think he's a creep and a weirdo. All that stuff. That's fine, but this is all symptoms of social media and influencer culture in general. People, like, saying nice things about it regardless of the kind of person he is. That's always going to exist. It has nothing to do with the broader topic.
That announcement came just a day or so after we saw another announcement, another case where you've got two men using surrogacy to purchase children for themselves, except this time the social media announcements were coming from Fox News contributor and Fox radio host Guy Benson. And curiously, there was lots of excitement from other conservatives who perhaps would have been really angry when it was Pete Buttigieg and the man he calls his husband doing this a little while ago.
The man he calls his husband, John. I understand you're salty. But you were 15 when gay marriage was legalized in the United States. Chill out.
Seeing children from surrogates, doing a little...
Talks like he was born during the Depression.
little photo shoot afterwards in a hospital bed and everything. But even a year or so ago, you know, when Dave Rubin announced that he was doing the same thing, we saw lots of support from conservatives for the results of gay men purchasing children together through surrogacy.
Why does he talk about... I know why he talks about it like that. He's trying to present surrogacy as though it is a similar function to purchasing a person. I assume he's going to do gesturing towards slavery, which is hilarious considering John Doyle's other opinions. But either way, it's all a setup to completely misconstrue what the situation is.
And for those unfamiliar with surrogacy, it's where a woman carries a child through IVF for a couple who will then take the child from her upon birth and raise him on their own. It's been happening for a while. Female celebrities have been doing this, literally renting another woman's womb to carry a child and then parading him around afterwards like an accessory as if everything is just totally normal.
What the like it's like what is this initial premise where you're acting as though the result of every surrogacy or most surrogacies or even a plurality of surrogacies involve a child being, quote, paraded around like some sort of accessory? What are you talking about? If you have problems with specific people, talk about those people. What does this have to do with the genders or sex of anyone involved?
But there's also been this trend that's increasingly popular of gay men using surrogates as well, and even more recently, a trend of conservatives celebrating this, so long as they vote Republican, because we love family values. We love the family unit and present fathers. We love present fathers in the household so much that we're doubling it. We are solving the fatherlessness problem by doubling the fathers in the household. I, as a conservative, support households with two dads, as long as they vote Republican. That's family values. That's the family unit. You know, we can just play creative mode with what those words actually mean, and you just keep saying it, and that's the plan. Okay.
This is interesting that John Doyle is generally young, you know. I don't know exactly how old he is now, 23, 24, don't know exactly when his birthday is. I think he was born in 2000, though. So statistically, probably 23, early in the year. But he's basically at odds with most of the people in his own political sphere, which isn't alien. I think even amongst us, we are pretty left-leaning, even compared to our peers sometimes, you know? But either way, it's kind of interesting for him that he has to deal with large figures, even people like Dave Rubin, who's not a huge figure, but you know. Other than Ben Shapiro, I think most of the right-wing commentators who aren't outright, like, white nationalists are like, oh, okay, they had a surrogacy, cool, whatever. John is so salty. He clearly wants to be Nick Fuentes, but he knows that that will ruin his life, so he wants to tiptoe around it as close as he can, and this is where he ends up, and it feels like a really awkward space. I feel like something's got to give one way or another with John. He either starts putting the mask back on and hides more of what he really believes, or goes full mask off. Because right now he's in a weird place where you can tell he basically believes everything Nick Fuentes believes, like full-on neo-Nazi stuff just in a suit. But he doesn't want to just say that. And it's so weird and awkward, and it comes off as more and more embarrassing the more he does it. Ashiboo says, people have been doing surgery since Bible times. Wasn't a biblical rule that if your brother died, you have to have a baby with his widow? Feels like surrogacy to me. That is, you're going to have a baby with her, but it's more to do with sort of like anchoring a relationship with her, because, it's the idea of women are not allowed to have property and take care of themselves, so someone has to take care of them. So by having, you know, taking on the dead brother's wife, you're taking on basically his property and responsibilities, including childbearing. So it's a very different cultural context. Still not good, but a little different than the way you described it. Meek says, John does know that there is such a thing as non-paid surrogacy. Matter of fact, his home state of Michigan has laws against paid surrogacy. I don't know. I don't know if he knows that. Don't think it matters if he does. That's not the point he's trying to make.
Okay, so we will go over surrogacy and the horrors of it, why it's wrong,
The
the negative effects that we
horrors.
see in children who grow up in all varieties of non-nuclear households and families. Some statistics about growing up in these kinds of households.
Is John aware that nuclear households are not like a traditional thing? Like, the nuclear family became a thing in like the 20th century post World War II in the United States specifically, and proliferated culturally. Like, it's not the only or primary way people have had families throughout history. So strange.
Analysis of the slippery slope, the effects that these LGBT conservative figures have on the broader movement, some interesting dynamics with conservative media companies, how we got to this point in the first place where conservatives are like, yeah, well, at least our gay dads who purchase made-to-order babies are going to vote Republican, why the current discourse is incapable of actually pushing back against these issues, some uncomfortable truths about these things that may help with that.
Oh boy, how thrilling to see those uncomfortable truths.
Why this is actually more subversive than this, and so much more.
What
So do me a favor,
in the
go ahead
world?
and stay tuned.
John Doyle in. Heck off, commie.
Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Heck Off Commie.
Nuclear families aren't even American, it's Japanese. Is that actually a thing, or are you making a joke that makes me mad?
Before we get started, I request the...
Because I was under the impression that traditionally in Japan, there were families that lived together in large, like, groups, as opposed to the nuclear family. Don't make jokes about the other thing if that's what you're doing. That's completely uncool. Jesus fucking Christ.
Of the audience. I have planned another dissertation-length video covering so many important topics. It began originally with a summary of my Twitter beef with Vivek Ramaswamy and how I was responsible for outing him as a pro-mass immigration globalist last January. Trust, I will
I think the thing on my chair's broken.
elaborate, I promise. And it's expanded since into this very thorough, very long, very important...
Does John think it's the 50s? John thinks it's the imaginary version of the 50s that exists in his head and in fiction.
Discussion on everything from immigration policy to political strategy to then Israel-Palestine, trends in elections, voting patterns, historic understanding of American identity, all sorts of stuff. But it all fits under one very important umbrella. And I'm very excited about it. I think we're going to learn a lot. So I'm leaning towards just putting it out as one final giant video for the beginning of next year. And then we have a couple more big announcements right around the corner. But this is going to be broken up into 3 parts. And it's going to play one after the other because I think breaking it up into segments not only helps organize it in my mind, but also in the mind of the viewer. So my question is, do you actually want me to post it like part 1, part 2, part 3? Or do you want another big video? Do you want me to just give you a giant video that happens to be broken up into 3 parts? I personally like putting out these giant videos, you know, one to start off the year. I think that's pretty cool, but I figure I would at least ask your opinion. But in the meantime, we've got a lot to discuss here today, and we'll be back again before the end of the year. My Christmas gift to you, 2 videos in December. It's a Christmas miracle. I don't know what's going on. But anyways, last thing, one of our guys in the HOC Discord put out a book recently. It's very well written, but
I don't think that happened, did it? No, we didn't put another video by the end of the year. Liar.
the content itself is really what's important. It's titled Muscular Christianity. It's a case for spiritual and physical fitness. Muscular Christianity, of course, being in reference to the Christian athletic movements from the 19th century in England and the United States. I remember when I first got sent the PDF, I immediately sent it to other people, probably illegally, because I thought it was important, okay? You know, it comes with a workout program and everything, but essentially it explains why we have to view a person not as just body and mind, the way the modern world does, not just as mind and spirit, the way, frankly, a lot of Christians do, but in a proper sense, which includes the links between the body, the mind, and the spirit, and how strength and all of these are required for you to flourish. And so check that out. I'll put a link to it in the description, a little stocking stuffer for you maybe, but yeah, I distinctly remember seeing a magazine at Kroger when I was but a boy, and on the cover was a man, and his stomach was inflated, giving the appearance that he was pregnant. It said like, first pregnant man or something, and I was like, wow, that's crazy.
Are you talking about a trans man, John?
Looking back though, I don't think the magazine was trying to claim that a woman became pregnant, but because she identifies as a man, therefore a man is pregnant. I think it was just like clickbait. You know, it was one, oh wow, freak science, check this out, like a sideshow attraction at a carnival, a freak show or something, like come one, come all, first pregnant man, you know, like one of those things. But now it's just totally normal. Still got women getting pregnant, but they're presenting it far more consistently in far more disturbing a manner, and it's being presented unironically, as if it's just true, uncontroversial, pregnant men.
John, trans people have kids. He really has no idea what he's talking about here. Yes, trans people have kids, John. Yeah. That's a thing, and it's been a thing. I know you're a little younger than me, but not that much. Do you think this is a new thing? Oh my. Duke Desiree with 200 bits says, reminder, that woman in this intro playing his wife isn't. It's his sister. He's single because he's so reprehensible. No women will touch him. Lily Lovestuff says, the traditional Japanese family is multi-generational, and traditionally the woman would go join her husband's family and be added to his registry. Since same-sex marriage is mostly not legal in Japan, only a couple of districts in Tokyo recognize it, the get-around is to have one partner adopt the other. That's funny. Fenekagami says, speaking of families, I wonder what pro-life people like John think of human chimeras. Under their logic, chimeras are not just killers, but cannibals, and the zygotes absorbing each other aren't as rare as you'd think. In fact, I think they're the second most common reason for why twins are, as rare as they are. For those who don't know, that's the concept of, like, in the womb, there's twins, but then one, like, absorbs the other, basically. So that's cool.
And pregnant people, whatever. So we've got that going for us. And now it's reached a point where there's so much going on. If you say, oh, these men say they're pregnant, people on our side are like, whoa, no, hold on. You're saying that woman thinks she's a man and is pregnant. Excuse me. No, allow me to clarify what I meant. These two men have purchased a child and ordered a child from his mother, whom they will raise as their own. He will never be able to meet his mother nor understand her love and warmth and nurturance, despite the gap that will be left by the absence of all of that. Oh,
John! Holy shit! A lot's going on. We're only 5 minutes in. This is gonna be a horrible gish gallop, I can already tell. Generally what happens is they will get an egg from a donor. Who knows where? Maybe someone they know, maybe not. Then they will find a surrogate. Then the two, like, dads will either choose one of their sperm, like their sperm cells, or they'll, like, just give it up to chance, and one of them will have their sperm, like, combined with the egg, and then that's implanted in the surrogate. And I know Baha brought this up. Does John genuinely not know that generally during surrogacy, like, the kid is biologically at least one of the dads, generally? Generally. Oh. Not that it, like, matters, because, like, adoption is a thing anyway. Who the fuck cares? But, like, he's acting like there is no relation between the people involved in all of this situation, and it's very confusing. Rachology says, oh dear God, Doyle, I'm too tired to put up with his bullshit, and so we'll catch the VOD later. Good luck, brave streamer, and have a short queer history cleanse for when you need a break from this hateful nonsense. Thanks for the link. And Isaac Inanimate says he should have no problem with pregnant men if he believes trans men are women. Further proof the transphobes think trans men are men, even if they won't admit it. Oh.
Well, that's different then. Like, there's this dynamic on the right where social conservatism means being anti-trans. That's it. And that's sometimes, mostly it's being anti-trans people who vote Democrat, or anti-trans surgeries, but only for minors. But on your 18th birthday, hell yeah, son. You come back.
Man, it's almost like adults. Pretty much everyone agrees should get to do what they want with their bodies. Weird.
Home with a shotgun and with no penis. It's the Yellowstone meme, you know? Shoot, boy, you're 18 now. Just run up to the party store, get some fireworks. We can just do it right there in that there backyard. Some bitch already got me paying out the nose for them hormones. I'll blow the damn thing off myself. Or you've also got people who are like, well, I have no issue with the LGB. It's really just the T. That's like a common line now. There's no coherency to anything these people believe. No concept of the slippery slope. No understanding of the enemies that they're up against. And I'm the first guy, by the way.
He's aware that slippery slope is a fallacy, right? Like, slippery slope isn't something that you're supposed to be like, fuck yeah, slippery slope. That's my go-to argument. Slippery slope argument is a fallacy, generally. That's not to say that you can't look down the road and say, hey, there are potential, like, issues, but, like, just saying it outright like, this is a slippery slope. You're doing the thing. You're doing the thing that we de facto know is bullshit as an argument. Bold move. Fenekagami says, remember, Hannah, conservatives of John's caliber hate adoption. They view it as a perversion of the family. Fair. Avant Gardner says, I both love and hate Doyle's streams. I love it because I can see his shit opinions without giving him a view. The bad is it's all of him. Yeah, I feel ya.
to criticize how the right has responded to the
What happened to the Public Domania stream? Disney. It's okay. I'm going through the process. I already submitted my thing that's like, hey, this is public domain. And everyone else who went through it had their thing removed, so they will. Just waiting for them to get to it. YouTube didn't update their, like, what's on the list of things that are in the public domain for their auto system, so it flagged the Steamboat Willie episode. Like, I figured that was going to happen, but it's still frustrating. It's like, you don't have the legal right to do this! like, it's not even that it's like... They act like it's like an inconvenience to them, you know what I mean? Like, oh, we'll get to that, we'll get it off at some point. Like, no, like, this is your legal obligation, like, what the fuck are you doing? You know what I mean? It's just weird. It's annoying, and it frustrates me, but it is what it is. Stromboli says, is it fair to say that if you can stop easily at any point, it's not a slippery slope, but we still shouldn't give conservatives any ground, so they do go down a slippery fascist slope? I think it's fair, like I said, to point out potential future actions. The difference is just saying this will automatically lead to this. A slippery slope fallacy is generally when you say this will happen, which will lead to this and this and this, and the escalation is unjustified. The escalation is assumed. If you can actually demonstrate with evidence a real escalation, that's not a slippery slope fallacy. That's just a potential danger.
The gender issue, which is by yelling, stop erasing women. Women have vaginas. Hey, you motherfucker, I'm a fucking woman. I'm a fucking woman with a fucking vagina, bitch. I will fucking kill you with my pink girl AR-15 if you ever try to take my daughter's soccer trophy, you fucking bitch.
Is there anyone he doesn't hate? Like, he hates most conservatives, too. Like, even most reactionaries, it seems like he hates. Who does John Doyle like? He doesn't like Nick Fuentes, despite wanting to be him, because they have personal beef. Does he just hate everyone on the planet?
Okay, like, this is what they then celebrate, though. Like, the gender conversation isn't actually about simple biology. The left is right about that. It's about the essence of gender. So, yes, of course it's biological, but what is implied by that biology? How do men and women tend to behave? What do those implications and tendencies mean for society? Like, this is...
Oh my goodness. Is John agreeing that gender is a sociological construct, but trying to couch it in, no, it stems from biology? You're talking about it as a distinct category, John. You know what that means? You already fucking lost. The real secret is he hates himself and is projecting it outwards onto everyone else. It's possible. It's possible.
This is the conversation that's being had, and the right loses because too many of us don't like that conversation, because while we may agree that, yeah, there are some differences between men and women, we ultimately agree with the left's conclusion, at least more so than a serious alternative to it, which is why you get so many, well, I'm a liberal, but the left has just gone too far. Those types of people washing up on our shores. So yeah, our counter to this has been this very vulgar, hey, women don't have balls, which frankly is not a very ladylike response, but the whole point of that rhetoric is that you can't erase being a woman because women have vaginas, and that's important because women use those to make babies. But then you can't celebrate these kinds of things because if two men can raise a baby, which was born from a woman's body, just like a man and a woman can raise that baby, then it really doesn't matter who has what part because everything is just interchangeable. You know, women have no unique value except for their vaginas. It'd be like, oh, I've got milk, you've got chocolate syrup, you know, let's make something happen here. No further...
Is John accidentally espousing a more feminist position than TERFs? Because that's fucking hilarious. Even John Doyle's like, reducing women to vaginas. He's not necessarily against that, but he's against it if also gay people are allowed to have kids. Because only vagina havers should have that. Okay, weird.
Insight into why you have milk and not chocolate syrup or vice versa. Just like, oh yeah, it is what it is. Who cares? Doesn't really matter. And if it doesn't matter, why get upset about it? You know, it's just like who has what body parts. Then yes.
Man, it's almost like it is arbitrary. Weird. Tea with Goblin says, if you see an elephant doing tricks and balancing a ball in the circus, would you say it's biology just because it's accepted as a norm? This is so funny that he is effectively, like, accidentally almost getting to the point here.
Milk, you've got chocolate syrup, you know, let's make something happen here. No further insight into why you have milk and not chocolate syrup or vice versa. Just like, oh yeah, it is what it is. Who cares? Doesn't really matter. And if it doesn't matter, why get upset about it? You know, it's just like who has what body parts. Then yeah, it's all just physical. It's all just physical matter. Who really cares? It's of no consequence. And that's why they're mad at the trans stuff, but then they'll celebrate gay couples using surrogates to acquire babies. And OMG, yes, I'm so happy for you guys. So much this. And it's because of that thinking. They actually agree with the left, which is why the outcomes always gravitate towards the left. They more or
He's
less
admitting he hates the concept of adoption. Yeah, he's a shitty person. The Langren says John is so close to a good take on gender here accidentally.
agree that being born a man or being born a woman has no real implication for your life, for your lifestyle, behaviors, choices, interests, temperament, intelligence, ambitions, other than what society might impose upon you. And if they do, it's not significant enough to really explain the gaps that we're tending to see between men and women, explaining the results of feminism, sex-segregated environments being abolished, etc. Like effectively, since all of them
explaining the results of feminism. So curious what he considers the results of feminism. I'm assuming he's not going to count the good things, which is, you know, most of the things of feminism.
liberals. The only difference is they want to acknowledge that men and women have different genitalia, because thinking otherwise would be crazy, right? Two men can raise a kid, but they can't make one. But if they pay me, I'll do it for them. And then it's a private transaction that the status better not interfere with. You gentlemen can hire me for my vagina, but you better fucking acknowledge that it's a vagina, and that makes me a fucking woman. So that's kind of like where we're at. So yeah, anyways, broadly speaking, establishment right, adjacent establishment right, all the usual suspects, all their fans, they're all okay with these kinds of things. But if you're not, it's because you're homophobic or something, even though forever.
How weird that he says it like that, but if you're not, you're homophobic or something. John, you are explicitly very homophobic.
We've had to hear about the family unit, the nuclear family, family values, sound of freedom, human trafficking. Okay, well, what is this then? You know, like, what would you call this? Ordering and purchasing a human being? What would that?
John, it's surrogacy. There's a different word for it because it's not the same thing, even a little bit. What are you talking about? Like, is he aware that, like, straight couples also do surrogacy? Like, this is not just a gay thing, and even if it was, who cares? Adoption is a thing. The concept of people being like, hey, let's have a baby, and then requiring extra steps for one reason or another is a thing.
That be then? You know, with adoption, you've got couples paying money to agencies, and it's going through this big bureaucracy and background checks and meetings and check-ins and these different agencies and supervision and training. But you can't just like straight up pay the parents for the child, because that would be trafficking. That's illegal. But with this, yeah, all the money goes to the genetic mother, genetic father, the birthing mother, some combination. It's all just wrong, using those modifiers on mother and father.
The genetic father. The couples are generally the genetic father. John has no idea what he's talking about. John, you stupid bitch. With surrogacy, one of the dads is generally the genetic father. You don't know the basics of what you're talking about, you idiot. Oh my god. I think he genuinely, in his head, he forgot gay men have, like, sperm. Like, I think in his head, he's so in the mindset of, like, gay guys don't have kids that he forgot that, like, oh wait, no, they still have testicles, you know, if they're cis generally, with functioning, like, you know, sperm cells. He forgot.
Father. It's literally like an order and a transaction for a human being. Like, even when we focus on the culture war stuff, we can't even do it properly. It's such an absurd environment on the right where we're screaming about how men and women are different. We must defend the family. Okay, well, what is the implication of men and women being different? Like, why do you shy away from that part? What is the extent of those differences? Can that inform our understanding of maybe the world that we live in today? If we understand men and women, understand marriage, understand the role of marriage.
He used PewDiePie. Thanks, Bullet Bill. I feel like at this point, John Doyle's showing he's not hip with the kids.
Marriage, how all of these things are linked. There's nowhere in the system where you would accept a concession on these types of things. It's all just one sealed system. Because if two men can get married, meaning the union isn't really complementary, it's just a partnership. It's like an agreement. Okay, well, why?
That's what marriage is, John. That's what marriage is. That's even a reductive thing for me to say. Marriage is a lot of things in different cultures and means different things in different contexts. Marriage can mean a legal agreement. It can mean a less formal relationship agreement emotionally that you have interpersonally with your partner that you call a marriage. It can be a religious thing. In your religion, if marriage is a ceremonial thing that involves God or your spiritual beliefs, then that's marriage. Marriage doesn't always mean the same thing, John. It's different.
Why can't they raise kids then? And if they can raise kids, well, why can't they order them from surrogates? Is that what love is? Just a partnership with you and your best friend? Or is it something?
That's part of it, not the entire thing, but yeah, love and marriage is you getting to hang out with your best friend and be partners in life. If that involves for both of you wanting to have kids, then you enter into that together and have children. Or if you can't have children, like go through like surrogacy or adoption, and then you go through raising that kid together. Yeah. If you want a metaphysical reason on top of that, that's up to you to come up with. But yeah, broadly speaking,
Something deeper? Is it something that we maybe don't even fully understand? This is the end result of social liberalism in the slippery slope. Humans are all
what do you mean something we don't understand? What?
blank slates, complete.
This is such an admission that he has no actual argument against gay marriage. Maybe there's just something about it, man. No, like, you can think that, to be clear, but when you try and impose that on other people, it's a non-starter because you can't justify it, like, logically. You can have whatever stupid personal beliefs you want, but the second you try and have those beliefs affect other people, you gotta justify them in a material, real way. You can't just say it.
Completely interchangeable, and therefore they can be commodified. Since the family unit has been completely abolished,
Hydrate.
total and full surrogacy. No one's related to any.
Did you know that the family unit has been completely abolished, everyone? It's completely illegal to be a straight married couple in the United States.
Anybody fully. We're all just mass floating around in our little commune. And further, not only do they not really acknowledge the differences between men and women, but by extension, they don't care to acknowledge perhaps the differences
John, if I didn't think there were any differences between men and women, I would have been a lot more apathetic to my position before transitioning.
between.
I think you're not recognizing... You can say that there are broad differences culturally, even physically, without saying that that defines you in a material way. Like, there are statistical tendencies and cultural tendencies, but these things aren't absolute. Like, you can't treat a broad statistical, like, map as a truth for individuals within that set of data. Like, you can't say, oh, broadly, men are like this, therefore, looking at an individual man, they have to reflect the broad average of the whole. That's not how this works. John?
A heterosexual relationship and a homosexual relationship. And I know that we've discussed this before, the differences between those relationships. Right now, this is just going to be more zoomed in. It's going to be a more zoomed in discussion as opposed to a broader conversation about the whole movement, history, etc. I've got it all up here, the homophobic dissertation. I just have to put it together into a nice presentation for the wonderful audience, probably on the website, maybe during Pride Month. But yeah, I mean, if the difference
Yeah, I'm guessing he knows that would probably get him banned from YouTube. Who knows, though? He's put a lot of bad stuff.
aren't that significant, then the relationships and how they affect children can't be that different, right? I mean, it's just about anatomy, not even biology. They say biology, what they really mean is anatomy specifically. Then yeah, like who cares? It's all ultimately interchangeable. And most conservatives would agree that the family unit is the backbone of society, okay? That's pretty good, but if you're going to talk about family structure, then you actually have to talk about family structure. You know, we like to broadly measure that by like fathers present per capita or whatever, but this has been going on for a while. Obviously, divorce is totally normalized, getting remarried, sometimes even multiple.
John, divorce needs to be totally normalized because it is normal, because marriage is an agreement, and sometimes that agreement falls apart. Imagine a contract with no way for other people to break it, even if people within that marriage break the agreements of the contract. You know what I mean? Like, if marriage is an agreement and we're treating it in terms of, like, civic responsibility when we're talking about state legal marriages, treating it as a legal contract, people need to be able to leave those when certain agreements of that, like, contract are null and void. And more broadly in the social sense, you should be able to leave people who abuse you, or when things just aren't going okay. That's fine. The ideal you have of, like, trapping women in abusive relationships to sate your weird fantasies about a Leave It to Beaver fantasy world that's never existed is nonsense. Seek therapy instead of doing whatever you're doing now, because it's not helping. Fennikagami says, Doyle, I'm a straight man, I'm married, I have a kid. I also live in a multi-generational home helping support my mother and brother. I know more about family than you. You are full of shit. I have a cousin who denies her own brothers and sisters because they're adopted. It's awful. Fuck John and everyone like him. It's frustrating, too, that he talks like this. Like, again, John, why do you think you know anything about having a kid or being married? You have never been married. You don't have a kid. Why do you think you have any personal experience to speak on here? It's nonsense. Speedy Yoshi with 30 months says, gasp, 30 months? That's older than I've been alive. If you're translating months to years? Yeah. I hope you're older than 30 months, though. If not, my goodness, you have learned to type very young, and who gave you a credit card?
Times, having step parents, step siblings, all of these things are totally normalized now, and so it really shouldn't come as a surprise to us.
Has John ever been in a relationship? I don't know. It's never been mentioned, I don't think.
That what is actually defining a family is becoming more subjective and experimental. But what we do know is that the farther that we get away from the nuclear family model, mom, dad, married with kids, the worse things get for everybody. I mean, virtually every metric.
Wow, that's the biggest correlation isn't causation I've ever seen in my goddamn life.
For evaluating the well-being of adults and children points to this. And of course, that's not every case, but statistically, that is what we tend to see. You start bringing people into these houses that aren't blood relatives. You start adding and subtracting parents like you're playing with Legos or something. Rates of abuse.
That's not the norm, John.
Mental illness, poor lifelong outcomes, etc. All of that goes up dramatically, which we'll get to.
John, abuse is higher when people can't divorce because they can't leave their abusive partner. Clockwork Fan, thanks for gifting 2 tier 1 subs.
In a second, but essentially, yeah, I'm against all of that. I'm against anything that seeks to promote or normalize the deconstruction or the disintegration of the nuclear family. Now, the reason that these particular...
John, no one is telling you you can't have a nuclear family if you find someone to consent. You just shouldn't be dictating what other people can do with their lives freely with other adults.
Particular stories are causing such a controversy and why
Doyle claimed to have a girlfriend in the Gaston video. Oh, you're right, he did. Wonder how that worked out.
they're leading to more discussions of surrogacy as a whole.
He was at least on a date or something. I don't know if it was a girlfriend, but it was a date.
Is because people are seeing these stories and they're having a very negative gut reaction to them. And like with a lot of things in America, people have been stripped of the tools to properly articulate.
I think he blurred that to make it look like he was breastfeeding. That's fucking weird.
Reaction to them. And like with a lot of things in America, people have been stripped of the tools to properly articulate these gut feelings and to diagnose the problems that they see right in front of them, but they still retain that understanding that, okay, something's not quite right here. And believe it or not, it's actually okay for the gut reaction to be like pretty much the core of your argument, or at least the core of what...
No, it's not. Really, this is where we're at? I have to argue that your feelings aren't enough? John at least used to try and pretend to have some sort of intellectual justification for his beliefs. Is he really at the point where he's so lazy and just, like, in an echo chamber where he feels comfortable being like, it's enough that I just feel icky about this. It gives me the ick. That's my argument. That's really sad. Netzerk, thanks for 35 months. Yeah, Shane Dawson sucks, but he is not representative of all gay people, which is what John is implying. Netzerg says, my bio dad is garbage, and my stepdad is the only man I'll ever call dad. John literally knows nothing.
Justifies your actions. And with people who don't agree, you have to wonder why they don't also have that gut reaction to these kinds of stories. Or maybe they even express a strong desire in the opposite direction. Maybe there's even something biological happening there that we'll reserve for a later time. I don't know. But regardless, your gut's going to tell you the whole story, because contained in that...
I gotta look up what that... What is he even talking about? It's different, like, amoebas and bacterias and stuff? Is he trying to imply that being not a bigot is a disease?
later time. I don't know. But regardless, your gut's going to tell you the whole story, because contained in that reaction is a timeless connection to knowledge and instinct, what is good, what is not. So it really doesn't matter if modern society has paid some like really smart person to tell you why this is good, actually, and it's not good. And this is important to talk about because it seems that these trends are just going to continue. It's going to affect the future going forward, because the only two issues that really matter right now are immigration and health. And the reason for that is very simply that civilization is going to be defined by the people in it, whether those people are your people or not your people, whether those
Who are your people versus not your people, John? How are you defining that?
people are doing well physically, spiritually, and mentally. And of course, these are all connected. And so in a real sense, this issue is kind of a combination of those two issues, insofar as we're concerned about the well-being and stability of future generations, because we're concerned about where these people are coming from, which does include a conversation about family structure, which is important.
Just again, xenophobia, doesn't like other cultures, doesn't think that immigrants assimilate, which is untrue.
And if these people are doing well, which does include a conversation about the conditions which are most conducive to people's well-being, generally speaking, almost absolutely speaking. And now I know
There's a
I'm going to be
coming.
called hateful and whatever. That's fine.
John,
it's
we
not true,
know
but
already.
that's okay. Like, I understand that's what the haters and losers were born to do. They're just going to seethe on the internet. But I say that because I know that there are people who typically enjoy the content who might find some of this offensive, be inclined to infer that my motivation behind these positions is something other than what it is. All of those reasons, by the way, are very clearly articulated here if you just watch all the way through. So to write it off as just like irrational hatred or fear or even religious fanaticism, that would just be dishonest, tempting as it may be. So we got a lot to get into, but first let's just go over what surrogacy is. For those unfamiliar, essentially it's an enforceable legal agreement that's made between a woman and another party, whether that's a person, a married couple, a gay couple, whomever, to carry a child.
John, you said married couple twice. Or you said couple twice. Like, what a weird distinction.
For them, and then upon delivering that child, she will receive payments in exchange for the child. Modern surrogacy, the way it's done now, it's only a few decades old, and there are a lot of things wrong with that that probably go beyond the scope of this discussion. Very Frankenstein-like, treating humans like commodities.
John, you're younger than the process. Fenekagami says, Shane didn't blur the nipple area. Weirdos like Doyle did that to imply the breastfeeding to talk shit about gay adoption. I know, I was pointing it out. John, I understand that you maybe don't like gay people. I say that, I don't know why I couch that in so much maybe. Of course, we know you're homophobic. But people have been doing surrogacy for a while. It's not Frankenstein. It's literally just people having a baby. It's fine. It's fine. This would straight up be like people thinking like, oh my goodness, that heart transplant, that's pretty Frankenstein. That liver transplant, kidney transplant, you're playing God. And I know people have historically made those arguments. Those people were wrong. Just like he's wrong about this.
You know, slavery
Baha points out paid surrogacy is not legal in most states, including Michigan.
is one thing, like that's obviously wrong, but like it makes sense. Like I understand the idea behind capturing rival men and making them into your slaves. That's been going on forever. But
Wait, what?
you know, slavery is one thing, like that's obviously wrong, but like it makes sense. Like I understand the idea behind capturing rival men and making them into your slaves. That's been going on forever.
That's enlightening.
But literally ordering babies like you'd order a new car, you know, you go into the interface and configure it just the way you want it. That's
John, that's not what surrogacy is. Do you think that surrogacy involves some sort of sci-fi technology where you go to like a Bethesda character creation screen and make your baby? That's not how that works, John.
very new. I don't understand that. That's a man-made horror beyond my comprehension. And that's why these people love it too. They love playing God. They love that sense of power or empowerment. Speaking of empowerment, there may be a time and a place.
John, people just have different moral considerations than you and don't find science scary.
Where you, as an American patriot, are put into a self-defense
Oh, it's already ad time. Great.
situation. Remember that time in the 1970s in New York? The power went out for like 48 hours and immediately there was rioting and looting? Of course you don't remember because you don't write the history books. Soon. The point is,
Terradona with 100 bits says rich and powerful men have had surrogates to get their heirs since ancient times.
If you think the likelihood of mass blackouts, food shortages, all of that, if you think that is less likely year by year, you're not going to make it. And maybe
He's playing to the prepper crowd now. Oh boy.
you don't live in a city, but we got pretty close in 2020 where these events started pawing at the suburbs and neighborhoods outside of the city. And
Pawing at the suburbs. Jesus
of course,
Christ.
you've got criminal gangs coming up from Latin America who are coordinating to loot houses, kidnap people, etc., etc. And
He's just straight up like Alex Jones fear-mongering, making shit up to sell products. He's like 24. What is the rest of his career gonna be like? He's already hitting like Alex Jones's rock bottom. Where is he going from here?
And anything that you buy in preparation for a situation like that is just going to be really helpful for whoever shows up to take it from you, unless you can reliably place shots on target. That's what this is for. You need to get the iTarget Cube today. What's great about the cubes, you place them in different spots, which is more realistic.
I don't care about this stupid fucking ad.
What's wrong with it? We continue. So yeah, a lot of conservatives even like this practice. They don't really see what's wrong with it because, of course, we have a lot of internalized feminism on our side. And so
Sorry, I've never heard the term internalized feminism before. That's pretty funny. Peoplord says slavery because work is harder than monopolizing violence.
surrogacy is, by the way, just feminism, which we will get into. But they maybe like it because they themselves want to do it for whatever reason. Maybe they can't have a child naturally. And I get that. Like, I can only imagine that sense of dread. You know, you plan to have a family, you find out that you can't naturally. You're desperate for any option.
I guarantee John Doyle, if he actually found a woman who wanted to be with him and have kids, if he were infertile, 120,000% he would have no problem doing some sort of surrogacy or something for himself.
Available to you. I understand that. I mean, there are going to be people even in the audience who have had children this way, and it may touch a nerve with them, especially with the women. So I'm not saying that I don't get it, but we still have to have an honest
Thanks for the link, Tea Time Tea.
conversation about it. So typically surrogacy involves a process called in vitro fertilization, IVF, the making of test tube babies in a lab. And in that process, only about 7% of the lives created end up being born alive. So for
Oh my god, lives. Fuck off. Most of them are just the fucking... He's literally calling clumps of cells, like very, very small clumps of cells, life. To try and obfuscate the reality of the situation.
every 100 lives that are created, only 7 about end up being born alive, and the rest die either because they don't survive the process, parents wanted specifically this gender, so they throw the rejects in the trash, etc. Like Paris Hilton had like 20 guys, 20...
Baja Correction says, I was wrong. Paid surrogacy is okay in all states but Michigan, Louisiana, and Nebraska. Wonder why. It's interesting. Wonder why it got banned in Michigan.
boys frozen in storage because she wanted a girl. The NSYNC guy, Lance, went through like several dozen embryos with all of his surrogacy attempts. And this is what ends up happening. Like, people want to be okay with it because they want to have a family, but it ends up just being a vehicle for celebrities and gay people who are trying to mix and match their perfect little...
Celebrities and gay people. Okay, these are two categories that have no business being next to each other. What are you even talking about? Surrogacy is already, if you are paying for it, and in vitro is an expensive process. It's already a thing that you're gonna have to have some money to do. But banning things just because you don't like certain rich people doing them and the way they're doing them isn't how things work. You don't get to take that away from other people just because you don't like hypotheticals about people you don't even know.
Well, designer families upon a mound of dead children. So in a moment of desperation, a lot of people will support this. But of course, what follows is something very sinister and abominable. Did you learn nothing from Pet Sematary? So there are a lot of arguments to be made. Really what it boils down to, I think, is if you're trying to play around...
I don't think he understood Pet Sematary if he thinks it's about surrogacy or in vitro.
...with powers that you shouldn't have access to, bad things are going to end up happening. Like, the question, I suppose, is how many embryos had to be killed to bring you your child?
Embryos. None, because embryos aren't killed, John. They're fucking embryos. I hear a wife. I assume Baja Blast?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so...
For those who don't know, it's been a while since you've had an official
Where's-
Baja Blast. This is, my wife, PhD in genetics. So there you go.
Yeah, and so, like, my research had to do with developmental and reproduction, like developmental biology and reproduction. So what John is saying, while could be correct, he is framing it in a way that it makes it incorrect. So in general, just with, you know, typical reproduction. So, you know, whatever couple getting together decide they want to have a baby and doing it au natural or whatever. Only 25% of only 25% of those fertilized eggs even make it to term. So, and that might even be, sorry, I'm trying to think of the statistic. I think it's 25% of the fertilized eggs make it to implantation, and then 25% that make it to implantation make it to, you know, full-term birth.
So the statistic he's bringing up in terms of in vitro is not far off from natural processes anyway?
Yeah, so if he's saying, oh, these embryos are being killed because the scientists evaluating the embryos, you know, you start with eggs, basically for IVF or, you know, egg donation. They basically super ovulate someone. So they give you a bunch of meds so that any follicle that starts maturing during that cycle, because normally you have a good amount of follicles that begin maturing during your cycle, but only one comes out on top, basically, and that's the one that will fully mature and then be ovulated and can be fertilized. So they essentially super ovulate you, where most, if not all, of the follicles that begin maturing during that cycle will fully mature, and then they go in and harvest those. The way that they do it sounds really terrifying, by the way, just in case anybody's thinking about donating eggs. They have to go in through the vaginal wall and take a tube and then, you know, suck out the eggs from each of the ovaries.
Fun. Stromboli asks, if a fertilized egg is passed during menstruation, could someone collect it and preserve it for future development?
Probably not. Like, I don't think that would work very well, but I guess possibly. But anyway, so you have this pool of mature eggs, and then you introduce them to sperm. And so from that pool, let's say you start with 20. From that pool, only a subset will fertilize. And the ones that fertilize move on in the process. The ones that don't get fertilized obviously are not going to be useful, and it would be the same thing as them being flushed out during menstruation. So then from that, they allow those fertilized eggs to develop. And for human IVF, it's normally they want them to make it to blastocyst, which is a stage that is around like 30 to 60 cells. And that's when they can, number one, do genetic testing if they want, which is only legal in some places to do genetic testing at that stage. And sorry, I know way too much about this. I could go on all day.
Yeah, you gotta truncate it.
Sorry, everyone.
You're good.
So anyway, they have this subset, and let's say you got 10 fertilized from the 20 eggs you started with, and the subset leaves you with 7 that make it to blastocyst. The ones that don't make it to blastocyst weren't going to make it to blastocyst whether they were in a uterus or not. So that's not killing anything. And then you save those 7. They get put in cryogenic storage, so in liquid nitrogen. And they can be used or not. There was a baby born from a frozen embryo that was frozen 20 years before they were born. The mom and the baby were technically conceived in the same year, but the baby had just been born to the mom.
That's weird.
Yeah. And frequently people that choose to do IVF, they don't waste those eggs. You can donate them to science, which is a great thing to do because that's really the only way we have of looking at human embryos are the ones that are donated. Because we can't go in and create human embryos ourselves. That's illegal. So any of them that are donated, it's very useful. You can also put them up for adoption, embryo adoption, where you have a bunch left over, you're not going to use them, and you want someone else to be able to use them. That's also a great thing. So still not killing them. And if you go through and do want to use all 7 of those embryos, there's only a 25% chance that those embryos will even make it to term anyway. But that's the same as if you were doing things naturally and had a miscarriage. Like, this is just fucking stupid. And John Doyle picked the wrong fucking topic.
Yeah. He's one step away from basically calling masturbation abortion. Like, he's basically, like, taking it... Like, does John know that women, like... Or, I guess I should say, people who have, like, eggs in the first place have a specific number when they're born, and then most of them aren't used.
Yeah.
Like, they're all going... Like, they're all coming out, John.
Yeah.
Most eggs are not fertilized, period. Like... Most
of your ovum don't even get the chance to be fertilized. Most of them don't mature because you have like a million or like a couple million unmatured eggs in your ovaries that obviously start maturing at puberty. Then you'll have 20 some odd start maturing and only 1 actually matures and is ovulated. So most of the eggs are going to waste just as nature intended anyway.
Fenekigami says, again, I ask Doyle, are chimera or zygotes that properly absorb their siblings cannibals? Because that's another fate of surrogates. They absorb each other. This rhetoric of Doyle's is proof of his proud ignorance. The funny thing is, he'd probably say they're cannibals, and they must repent.
I mean...
He might not believe everything he's saying, guys. He's the kind of person who uses rhetoric if it gets his point across, regardless of what he's saying is what he really means or believes. He just doesn't like anything to do with gay people having rights, and that is what he is doing. Whatever rhetorical tools he thinks he needs to do that, he's going to use.
Can I say one more thing?
Sure.
Oh god, I lost it. Sorry. Also, everyone, my ADHD is unmedicated, so that's where that tangent came from. But love you. See you all.
Could you also bring me my ADHD meds? I forgot them downstairs.
Yes.
Thank you. Fenekigami says the oldest woman to ever give birth was 65 and her pregnancy was surrogate. Also, they usually implant multiple blastocysts into the surrogates at once to increase success rates. That's why surrogacy has a higher rate of twins, etc. And a hydrate.
What's your personal line of decency with that? Like, how many do you believe were justified? And how does that make you feel about your life and your family? Like, ultimately, that's on you. That's between you and God. I just have an obligation to speak out against what is wrong. Like, don't shoot the messenger.
John, you have still not really given an objective way that you think that it's wrong. You just said you think it's icky.
I don't want your emails. And we'd mentioned this earlier. issues with non-nuclear family structures. And so people will say, well, what's wrong with surrogacy and then not adoption? Why is one better than the other? And the
Another
answer to
juggle.
that is that there are cases where adoption is necessary, obviously. Cases aren't ideal, but they do happen. There are no cases where it is necessary to order a baby like he is a commission. You know, if a child is adopted, adoptive parents are there.
What do you mean necessary? John, people have rights to pursue things that make them happy, whether you like it or not, as long as they're not hurting other people, and you haven't demonstrated that this thing is hurting anyone. You just don't like it because it makes you feel icky. Like, that's it. That's what it comes down to. Comparing it to anything else is an attempt to obfuscate the reality of the situation, which is you don't like gay people and don't think that they should be able to have kids. Oh, I see a cat.
No Pine says, here, Mom.
Oh, God. Thank you. Doyle might not believe everything he says with a link.
You really think someone would do that? Just go on the internet and tell lies?
No, Buster. That would never happen.
To support that child, make him feel safe and loved. With surrogacy, the parents are the ones who caused that deracination. How can they possibly understand or sympathize with a problem that they not only created, but planned to create and celebrate having done so?
Did you just call a child a problem? Oh my God. I hope Yama never has kids.
Like, these kids are far more likely to have identity struggles, trauma from
What are you basing this on? What are you basing this on?
not having their mother, feeling as though they were commodified, feelings of trauma from separation. They have like lack of medical history. They have to worry about, you know, potentially dozens of half siblings out there who they'll never.
I'm sorry, lack of medical history? Do you think that they don't get the medical history of the surrogate as well as like the egg donor if they are different people prior to the surrogacy? John is straight up making shit up. Like, this is pathetic even by John's standards. He's just opining his feelings. Like, who is that guy, James Somerton, who recently got caught for plagiarism, but the things that he said that were original were just, like, feelings he had that he just said as if it was fact? That's what John's doing right now, is he's basically feeling something and deciding, that's probably true. Let's state it in this video like it's a fact.
Ever meet? What happens if they end up dating their half sibling or something? These are things they have to think about. I mean, it's very...
John, I understand that your particular fetishes might cause you to think about incest and accidental incest a lot. That's not something that most people think of as any sort of problem. What are you talking about, John? Ugh.
Very unique set of problems and circumstances. So they can't exactly talk to their parents about because they might feel guilty or ungrateful, like they're arguing against their own existence or something.
You think kids don't talk to their parents about stuff like that? I'm sorry that you don't have good communication with your parents. I know how that can be. But that doesn't mean that other kids aren't able to communicate those feelings to their parents because they have healthy relationships with those parents. Logarth says, stating you don't want him to have kids whilst taking ADHD meds feels like the ritual for ancient curse done under a moon of some kind, swallowing the potion and chanting the words, wearing the cat ears.
Maybe the parents become immediately defensive about their decision. Like,
this guy's making you mad. Don't be too mad. He used to make me mad too, but then I realized that, like, even amongst right-wingers, John is in the minority. Like, he's unpopular even amongst most people who self-identify as, like, right-wing. John pushes an air of confidence, but it's fake. It's very fake, and it lies floating atop a pool of insecurity. You can tell. It seeps through. You can smell it. I just don't think that John has more influence than he does. He does not have much influence at all. He's very extreme.
Like, we wonder why these kids disproportionately struggle with depression, delinquency, substance abuse. So, in looking into this, I found this Twitter account that claims...
Pretty sure instance of children using alcohol and marijuana is actually down compared to, like, the 90s, including also stuff like premarital sex, or sex, you know, as a minor in general.
to document all the problems with surrogacy. And so naturally, I'm like, oh, this is perfect. Let's go through this. And so then the most recent thing I see is when they're like, surrogacy exploits women's poverty and their need to support their own families. Exhibit A. And I'm like, oh, here we go. And I look at the picture and it's a woman bragging about using the money she made renting out her womb to go on a vacation to New York City with 2 of her kids, go on another spring break vacation with her other kids, paying for soccer, dance, music lessons. Wow, yeah, very exploited. These are very exploited people behaviors.
John, one influencer you don't like being a bit cringe is not a good argument against the process as a whole. Why are all of his examples here influencers? It's almost like he picked very visible, weird things to try and act as though it's the norm. Logarth says, bro looks like a preppy I don't read stuff that has to do with people's looks.
I clock him a mile away. I'm like a bloodhound with this stuff. I'm so sorry that happened to you, sweetheart. You must have been gaslit. You must have been manipulated. It also said she doubled her savings. You know what doubling your savings means? You know what it means when you do that, when you double your savings? It means that you had savings. People in poverty typically do not have savings. Also,
agreed. Sidosaurus says he uses the American College of Pediatrics as a source, which is a right-wing group of doctors opposing abortion, trans people, and gay people. They have a similar name to the reputable group of doctors, so people get confused by the misinformation a lot. It's gross, but not surprising coming from him. Gotcha.
So poverty in America is not even a real thing. That's a discussion for a later time. We have a lower class, obviously, yes. Let's call it what it is, though. It's a lower class in America. That's not what we mean when we say poverty. So I saw that and I'm like, okay, I'm sure they do good work. Anything that's putting fire downrange against surrogacy is probably good work, but I'm not interested in sob stories about how women are the real victims. I think I saw more stuff about that, about how women were the poor victims rather than stuff about the children. And yeah, I think that's...
Did he say poverty doesn't exist in America? I missed it.
Not what we mean.
I was processing some other stupid bullshit. Give me a sec.
Yes. Let's call it what it is, though. It's a lower class in America. That's not what we mean when we say poverty. So I saw that and I'm like, okay, I typically do not have savings. Also, poverty in America is not even a real thing. That's a...
Oh, okay. He really said it. Holy shit. John. Ah! Pterodona with 100 bits. You know nothing, John Doyle.
Discussion for a later time. We have a lower...
He thinks poverty doesn't exist in the United States? Holy fucking shit.
Class, obviously, yes.
The silver spoon was so far in, it's poking out his butt.
Let's call it what it is.
Like, how can you live such a sheltered life that you don't think poverty exists in America? What the fuck?
It's a lower class in America. That's not what we mean when we say poverty. So I saw that and I'm like, okay, I'm sure they do good work. Anything that's putting fire downrange against surrogacy is probably good work, but I'm not interested in sob stories about how women are the real victims. I think I saw more stuff about that, about how women were the poor victims rather than stuff about the children. And yeah, I think that's probably true. So, you know, again, there's a lot of conversations about this in the discourse about how women are the real victims being exploited. This is the real Handmaid's Tale because, of course, conservatives are incapable of making arguments that do not appeal to some victimized outgroup. But look, like we said, with surrogacy as a whole, there are a lot of bioethical arguments. There are a lot of arguments about women. I don't really care about those arguments because I don't really care about abstractions and I don't really care about women other than the ones I just saw at Thanksgiving. But I do care that these children have no one to speak up for them. And they would certainly never want to be deprived of their mothers and treated as property, much less go into the hands of men who have histories of perverted behavior. Yeah.
Again, the entire thing is you consider homosexuality to be perverse and related to, like, illegal and immoral behaviors, which you are not demonstrating. You're literally doing facts care about your feelings. Jesus Christ. Overthought, thanks for gifting a sub to Halloween Town.
Yeah, all surrogacy is bad. This is especially bad. So if we can use this discussion to make people realize that surrogacy is bad, maybe make the anti-surrogacy people realize that this is even worse, we can call it a day. We can get out of here. We have to stop viewing surrogate women as victims. We also have to stop shying away from the fact that, yes, it's actually worse when 2 men do it. Well, it has nothing to do with...
No, it's not.
It's homosexuality.
Neither is bad.
It's about exploiting women. Thank you. The anti-surrogacy discussion, like all of right-wing discourse, is filled with very weak arguments that have to appeal to these liberal tendencies by saying things like, well, it exploits impoverished women. This is just like Handmaid's Tale. And we do this because we're unconfident in our own positions, because we're cowards.
Because they're unpopular, demonstrably.
Because
literally the best rhetorical tool you guys have is lying, because your actual opinions are so unpopular and dangerous and dog shit on the face of them that most people automatically know that they're bad. So you have to lie. Lying is the best thing that you can do, basically, if you want people to go along with your shit, because your shit is unpopular.
Because we're cowards, we, similarly to women themselves, refuse to hold women accountable for their own behavior and call a spade a spade. And I understand, like, there are horror stories. I sympathize with that. But the types of women who would rent out their wombs tend to have genetics that would suggest they'd be more than capable of earning a living in another way. Or they could just actually get married and raise their own children. Like, when we talk about why we all—
What the fuck? So you still want them to sell their uterus just through a marriage contract to a specific hypothetical man? What? Bitter old ass broad with a $10 super chat on YouTube says, woo, a YouTube live on a Sunday. Doyle should just join a polygamist cult. No. Doyle should not be involved interpersonally with anyone.
Always lose.
Married women do surrogacy too. That's so true. He even showed an example of someone who did earlier. She was talking about, like, her family vacation. I guess I don't know if she has a partner, but I assumed.
Because we're cowards. This is the quintessential example of that. You can't oppose something because it's bad. Only because it's really bad for this group of poor victimized people. The thing in itself—
John, you can dislike things because they're bad. You just have to justify why you're saying they're bad instead of giving a vague sense of you are uncomfortable. You being personally uncomfortable with something in an uneffable way or ineffable way isn't an argument. That's you saying you need help to work through an issue. It's not something other people have a responsibility to respond to in kind. That's not how this works, John. Jesus. Amber Pretzels with 22 months says, I swear, bro needs to be absorbed by kudzu. The level of not touching grass has reached turf stomping level. How is he still mentally stuck in middle school despite being old enough to drink? I think he's been insulated by his community, so he's never had to challenge any of these really dog shit ideas, and he's continued to both become more radicalized while helping radicalize others. It's super unfortunate.
Itself is only bad and therefore worth pushing back against because it's mean to a group of people, and that is bad. People are paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to try to sell this messaging to disaffected white guys in Wisconsin. Who is this for? It's like if your waiter got your order wrong, they bring you like a cheeseburger instead of an omelet, and instead of just saying, hey, yeah, I didn't order a cheeseburger, I ordered a Western omelet. I don't want lunch, I want breakfast. But instead of just saying that, you're like,
No, John, because that is a situation where it is your food that you ordered. That's a you thing. You're saying that that person over there who ordered an omelet, you think that they should get a cheeseburger, and you want to tell them, hey, you can't have that omelet. I think omelets are bad because of an old book, okay? Those omelets are bad and evil, and don't even ask me to justify that logically, because I'll make a bunch of jokes ironically to make it seem like I'm above everything, when in reality I'm actually just really insecure. John, you don't get to dictate the behavior of others just because it upsets you if they aren't actually doing harm to people, and they aren't. You are just in your feelings about this, and I want you to have the self-awareness to realize it. Amber, nope, read that one. Cool.
Excuse me, hi. I'm like allergic to cheeseburgers. Can I just get like 2 eggs, please? And like, just say what needs to happen, you know? And maybe it's like a tactical decision. Ooh, big brain. We're going to use ground that we've already lost.
Maybe most people disagree with you.
To maybe secure a victory in the future, appeal to an incumbent framework, even if it's something that we don't like, even if it's not ours. The thing with that, though, I never see these people rotate back to push farther. So it seems that they actually agree with the leftist premises in themselves, but they just think that perhaps they've been taken too far.
It's almost like conservatism is an inherently self-defeating ideology when the only consistent theme in history is change, socially, economically. Things change. People's beliefs change. Cultures change. Ideals change, John. Fenigami says it's validating to say this makes me go ick. Loads of people aren't into things just because it makes them go ick. The difference is that's about boundaries and personal preferences, not dictating other people's behavior. This is a huge thing that so many people clearly did not learn. There is a difference between you are uncomfortable with something and something is wrong. They're not the same thing. They're not mutually exclusive, but they're not the same thing, and you can't use one to indicate the other. You need to individually determine which is which. When are you just feeling icky because you personally have something about this, and when is something actually wrong morally for reasons you can articulate? Tea with Goblin says, and thus Moses said to Pharaoh, let my people go.
As opposed to their natural and intended conclusions. Well, just because something's natural doesn't mean it's good. Appeal to nature fallacy. You know what's funny about that? I noticed the further away we get from things that are natural.
I like how instead of changing his argument, he's decided to justify his fallacy. No, you don't understand. You're just actually delusional and corrupted from nature because you don't believe my fallacy. I'm actually very smart.
The more overwhelmed we are with very bad results, such as
John, again, these are your subjective views, so...
these situations. Can you imagine supporting this? Can you imagine...
The picture he put up, by the way, is there being miscarriage during a surrogacy and them going to try again. John, I know you're basically a child, but when people are trying to get pregnant, whether it's through surrogacy or not, miscarriages are a quite common thing. Especially in, like, the first trimester, early on. It's a common thing. It's not something that's abnormal or something to be ashamed of or whatever. It's a sad thing, and people should deal with those feelings however they feel the need to. But it doesn't mean that you shouldn't do surrogacy. That's part of, like, gestation in humans. That's part of gestation in any animal. Biology is not some magical process that always works perfectly. Things happen. And if you're going to be an adult and have discussions about this, you need to know that. And if you don't, you should shut up until you have life experience and know people.
Imagine not pushing back against this. Imagine tearing a newborn baby away from his mother. They don't even do that with puppies. The only person in the world who that baby is familiar with. He's literally crying out, craving her touch and the sound of her voice and her warmth and her smell. And she's what, in another room bleeding by herself, refreshing her bank balance so that you can play advanced house.
This is so fucking anger-inducing on the part of John. It's just pure vile hatred with no justification. You can tell he's just absolutely fucking seething about it. And it's all because he just feels ick. That's unfortunate.
Causing irreparable psychological damage, which has been proven time and time again to
when? Where?
This child, because you want to play advanced house.
Who? Where? What? Again, he's just saying shit.
A child whom you claim to love.
Proven time and time again, no citation.
Love and care for. What a joke, dude. Why is this allowed? The way I see it and the way the founding fathers saw it is that our rights come from God.
Let me cite some people who have been dead for a few centuries. They feel the same way I do.
There's no right to...
That's convenient for you, isn't it, John?
...to a child. Children aren't entitlements. They're blessings. You're not owed a child. You don't have the right to order and purchase a child. And if your rights come from nature, well, this whole...
Your rights come from social agreements. Rights are sociological. Rights are things that we all collectively agree should be rights, and we enforce them or don't. Like, they're not a thing that exists sans humans. They exist in our heads. It's like morality. It's like any of these human constructs. That doesn't mean it isn't useful and important. It does, however, mean that it's something that exists between us, people. It's not a physical thing that exists in the universe that's measurable. Miss Quilanius, or rather, Mequilerius, 99 says, I remember in the past, John would put up BS citations to prove his points. He can't even do that nowadays.
process was invented to circumvent what is actually natural. And if you mean that like
what is actually natural?
Midas right,
John, do you think that a lot of the modern gestation and birthing process is natural? People go to doctors, take vitamins and medication, take the advice of doctors. They generally give birth in a hospital. These things aren't natural. Again, I know you already said, like, oh, you're just going to use the natural fallacy. You did. You used it. I'm sorry you don't like that you're getting called out on it. Something being natural does not automatically make it good. It just isn't how anything works. And your, like, defiant need to express that you're still going to use that fallacy, it's frustrating because it shows that you could have personal growth. You see what you're doing, but you choose not to. And that's really, really sad to see.
sense. Don't
Yeah. Let's look at all the things that aren't natural in the room with John right now. A computer, a camera, a microphone, a gun, a helmet, and a sign. A Jesus bobblehead.
don't have to sell me on that one. That's fine. We're just going to become mightier than you and make it illegal, and you're going to go to prison. But it's true, because
if you want to keep masturbating about fantasies where you have any amount of agency in society, I wish you well, John. I do think, however, it would behoove you to learn skills that would make you a productive member of society who isn't a hateful shit that everyone dislikes.
If you have a right to a child, that means human beings are not human beings.
What?
How do you have rights to somebody who also has rights? And I wouldn't go as...
I feel like you're confusing, like, rights to take steps to have a child or rights to, like, always have that child no matter what? I'm confused by the point you're trying to make, because, like, the same argument you're making now, if you're saying that people should have to, like, prove that they can have kids, that would apply to everyone, presumably. You're arbitrarily deciding that people who want surrogacy can't have kids at all, but anyone who is capable of producing children via their own genitals, that's cool. Arbitrary. Completely arbitrary. Fenekagami says, when my wife and I had a few pregnancy scares, the research I did said only a third of all attempts to fertilize at the right time result in pregnancy. That's not including how many pregnancies end in miscarriage. You can lose the child even in the safe period. Our first child was stillborn in the 3rd trimester. The ignorance of the struggles of expecting parents is so infuriating, and it pisses me off so much how much these people try to fetishize my own dead daughter. Oh yeah, I know. I think part of the problem is people like John genuinely don't talk to women and haven't in their entire lives. Like, you guys, of course, know I'm trans, so when I was younger and being perceived as, like, a boy when I was pre-transition, the way I learned about this stuff, because it isn't generally talked about, at least when I was a kid, it wasn't talked about a lot publicly, so when I did learn about these things, how common miscarriages are, how common, like people getting, complications and having to have terminations for their own health. Like, I had friends who came to me about this stuff because even though they perceived me as, like, a guy, they trusted me because I was a decent enough friend, you know? John, I assume, hasn't had that, so he's not had these interactions with women who can, like, talk to him about personal things and get their perspective and understand realities that he just has never had to face or understand. It's frustrating. It's frustrating him talk about this as if he knows what he's talking about when time and time again he is illustrating that he has no idea what he's talking about. Like, it doesn't even seem like he did a modicum of research about this even to get his terms right or to understand what surrogacy even fundamentally is. He's just an overconfident prick, and it's all he has. It's not good.
As far as to say it makes human beings property, because, you know, they wouldn't support something like slavery unless it was us being enslaved. They really, I think, only care.
No, John. Most people don't support slavery at all. Having children isn't slavery because you don't own your children. You are guardians over them. The same as if you had biological children. If you are a surrogate, your children are not your property. You are their guardian legally. and kids can be taken away from their guardians, biological, adoptive, surrogate, whoever their guardians are, for things that are illegal, for mistreatment. Like, these are already laws that are in place and take care of these issues, or at least attempt to address these issues, regardless of whether it's a kid who's a surrogate or born biologically, like, with two parents who didn't need to do surrogacy. It's the same thing. You're using this as a rhetorical tool, to try and bludgeon, like, LGBT parents. And it's so transparent. Mr. Duck Sauce, thanks for 3 months.
About their power and making their enemies miserable. Simple as that. Like, that's how they view existence. Everything exists for their pleasure. Enemies are people who impede in any capacity their pleasure. Even with virtue signaling, like, that's ultimately just using the alleged suffering of other groups of people to pleasure themselves by publicly expressing their altruism. It makes them feel good.
John, people disagreeing with you isn't that. It's not virtue signaling to say things that people really believe. Feels like projection. Mirusama says, Nicole is booping you. Hello, Nicole. I see you, cat. Cats don't know what the internet is. They just think I'm in the TV.
Surrogacy in general is wrong and it's selfish. Infertility is not a death sentence. I mean, a lot of times, especially nowadays, it's related to your lifestyle with all the chemicals in our food, in our water.
All the chemicals.
Our clothing, etc. Hold on. Did I just say chemicals in the clothing? Okay, gamers. Imagine for a moment if you could turn the—
Oh my god, he's doing it! It's another ad! Oh my god! There are only like 10 minutes between those ads! Holy shit! Alright, gamers, let's do an embarrassing ad read for cheap underwear you buy on the internet.
that nature at a time. Know how to cover full socks, which are fine. Properties that you—
Oh, they have skulls on them. Are we the baddies? That's sad. The nerve of him trying to use virtue signaling as some kind of gotcha and then immediately segueing into selling people conservative underwear with skulls on them because you're a manly man is fucking hilarious.
Offer code Doyle20. Very epic. We continue. Ultimately, it has to be considered why your desire to raise a child outweighs the child's right to his mother. Will these people consider—
This child, hypothetical child, A, is generally genetically half the parents anyway, which he seems to still not know, and B, would not exist anyway if it wasn't for the surrogacy. What are you talking about?
that? Probably not, but we will have to consider that when thinking about what is to be done with this issue. Adoption's one thing, but surrogacy, like made-to-order creation of new life, that's selfish, that's wrong. An adoption in itself isn't supposed to be like babysitting or caretaking. Like, all right, yeah.
I'm sorry, what? Oh my god, his shit takes about adoption are about to be fucking ridiculous, aren't they?
Adoption's one thing, but surrogacy, like made-to-order creation of new life, that's selfish, that's wrong. An
John, you know people choose to have children all the time, right? That's what people do when they choose to have kids, is they're like, let's do this, and then they'll generally, some people just wing it, but like, if you're having difficulty, generally they'll be like, okay, I'm ovulating, let's do this. You know what I mean? People intend to have children all the time. If you're saying that's somehow abuse or wrong, then like, a good portion of every human to ever be conceived is morally wrong. This is like weird anti-natalist rhetoric. This is Malthusian. Tea with Goblin says, I wonder if John feels as strongly about the rights of children held at the border to their biological parents. I'm gonna guess no.
Adoption in itself isn't supposed to be like babysitting or caretaking. Like, all right, yeah, we'll take it from here. Food, water, shelter, clothing, right? And it's like, okay, got it. No, it's understood as the best case scenario for the child given the circumstances.
Does John really think that adoption is like babysitting and doesn't understand that when you adopt a kid, you're supposed to like adopt them like they're your kid? You're not just babysitting them. What? What does it say about these companies that they still support him? Most people this far right do their own merchandise because they can't get sponsorships. Oh, his sponsors are like far right shitty companies.
Which is to have a positive male and female presence in the child's life. It's not just about like adult supervision. Okay, yeah,
Does he really think that adoption is just basically long-term babysitting? Because holy shit, this guy's fucked up.
Moms, two dads, They, them, who cares? Just feed it. Well, studies show they're actually just as well off as children raised in nuclear households. Yeah, they might be well adjusted in the sense that...
Oh, is this his butt? Yeah, sure, all of the data shows I'm wrong, but here's a feeling I have to try and make me justify the belief instead of changing it based on the evidence. And if I say it like this, like I'm confident, that means I'm right. That's his whole dumbass attitude. It's so funny. It's like he learned this one thing when he was like 16. He learned, I'm a white guy, and if I talk into a microphone... Hold on, let me do my... Hold on, because that's a trick I learned back in the day too when I was that. So let's summon some of that energy for a second. I'm just like a white guy on the internet, and like, if I'm just confident about things, people will just believe everything I say, right? You can't do that forever, John. You can't. I promise. I promise you very much, you can't. At some point, you actually have to have something worth saying. Put something together. Good God. Finigami says, remember everyone, the left is anti-children, the left is anti-family, not deranged, hateful freaks like this guy.
That they keep their nose clean, do relatively well.
Please don't do that again. Why not?
In school, pursue higher education, etc. When you start to examine the less superficial metrics, things that really implicate the overall quality of life, sense of being, not so much. And again, it's really not complicated. The only question that matters is this good for society? No other question ultimately matters.
Who gets to decide that, John? What are the criteria for what's good for society? Because I would say that people being allowed to go and do things they want as long as they're not harming people directly, that's pretty good. That's pretty darn good. The whole pursuit of happiness and all that fun stuff.
Is it popular to want to get rid of this? No. We haven't held power and opinion curating institutions in a long time, so nothing we believe is popular.
Sometime in the early 40s, I'm guessing, is the last time you consider that your ideology had a foothold anywhere. Heyo. Sidosaurus says, it's like you were possessed by a ghost of Christmas past. Spooky. I'm telling you, one of these days in the future, if I'm comfortable enough, I'm going to do a whole April Fool's stream as, let's just call it a previous persona, and it'll be very funny. Tea with Goblin says, one of my favorite... You don't have to watch! That's fair. Tea with Goblin says, one of my favorite things about hanging around with trans women is that occasionally they'll pull out the party trick and sounds like Matt Berry without notice. That and pickles and IT support. Okay, I won't do that. It would make me very uncomfortable. But it's a funny thought.
No, but still important. Is it politically correct? Same answer. No, not really. The good news is that public opinion really doesn't matter. So we can't let that dissuade us. If we're organized enough, we can do whatever we want, but still.
Literally listen to him. The little fascist is so brazen. He is going more mask off. Listen to this shit.
The matters is this good for society? No other question ultimately matters. Is it popular to want to get rid of this? No. We haven't held power and opinion curating institutions in a long time, so nothing we believe is popular. But still important. Is it politically correct? Same answer. No, not really. The good news is that public opinion really doesn't matter. So we can't let that dissuade us. If we're organized enough, we can do whatever we want, but still.
Like, he's literally just being like, I think he's so dejected. I think when he was younger, when he was 16, because he got on doing these channels, doing this channel and being a Trump supporter, like a hardcore MAGA Trump supporter, when he was like 16, before he could even vote. And I think he really took that up as his identity for whatever reason. I don't know what his personal life was like. I don't know if he was lonely. I don't know what his relationship with his parents is like. But for whatever reason, he very firmly attached himself to this whole Trump MAGA thing, which led him into further right, like, neo-Nazi or like neo-fascist, crypto-fascist circles. And he has so adopted this as his identity And he came up in such a time where, like, the Trump stuff was really gaining popularity, and he was, like, 16, so he didn't have historical perspective. I think he legitimately doesn't understand that, like, even if Trump wins in 2024, which I hope won't happen, it would have a lot of bad consequences, and I think it would be terrible. Fascism inherently is self-destructive. None of what you are doing is A, likely to succeed in the medium term, and B, if it even did succeed in the short term, it's short term. Look at the last time people like you had power, since that's what you were talking about. Look at, again, Nazi Germany, or any other fascist state. They tend to collapse because totalitarian societies don't function well when you have all the people at the top who not only have all or most of the power, but are actively, like, insulated against reality because anyone bringing them bad news or not doing the will of, like, the party well enough, it falls apart. Look at what happened to, like, Germany in World War II as more and more time happened and more power of army decisions accrued in Adolf Hitler himself and all the bad decisions he made. Like, it's frustrating to see someone not only be immoral, that's one thing. I'm getting comfortable dealing with really immoral people. Like, it is what it is. I've kind of gotten a little numb to it. The layer that has, like, become unpeeled to me more recently in the past year or so that's really frustrating is me understanding how they get to this point, or understanding the underlying beliefs that belie this sort of rhetoric and how self-defeatist they are. They are inherently self-defeating, temporary, based on, like, bruised egos or insecurities. It's so sad. It has nothing to do with actual functionality in society or broad plans. It has everything to do with using the apparatus of the state to absolve yourself of dealing with personal emotional problems. It's using the apparatus of power of the state to bludgeon everyone else into behaving in a way that makes you the least uncomfortable about your insecurities, and that'll never work because you can't outrun them. No matter how much you try and move the pieces on the board, the problem is coming internally. It's coming from inside you, in your brain, in your mind, in your feelings. So as much as control he might want, nothing he would ever do would make those go away. They'll catch up to him. Whatever ideal society he imagines today, if he created it, his insecurities would adjust and run right up to where he is. You can't get rid of that. You cannot have a lack of lack. Everyone feels desires. Those desires are often driven by insecurities or emotional needs. You can't fix the world and not try and fix yourself and expect the external to fix your internal. Anyway. Gitara, thanks for a membership on YouTube. Says, I thought that far-right guys like John were super concerned about birth rates of white people. Doesn't surrogacy help them, quote, solve the issue? The issue is that it's not what they consider natural. And also he's using this as a rhetorical tool to more discuss gay people. It's not necessarily that surrogacy is the top of the list of things that right-wingers, if they got into power and had absolute control, would get rid of. But right now, in the system we are in, the way that the right communicates is very top-down. So generally, I don't know if it's like, and I'm not trying to be a conspiracy here, I'm not saying there's a big organized group, I'm just saying that in any political ideology, there are groups that are interested in figuring out ways to push certain messaging, propaganda, intentional campaigns to try and change opinion. And I'm not saying that as a conspiracy or as a derogatory, it's just true. People put messaging out there, regardless of the actual morality of said message. So right-wing figures, at some point, something will pick up as a meme, like this surrogacy thing with Shane Dawson. That's easy to, as a narrative, use as a bludgeon to harm gay people. So right now, when they're talking about this stuff, surrogacy all of a sudden becomes a hot button issue. It'll be forgotten next week when they're on to the next thing. The important thing is that they are constantly putting in a deluge of attacks against their perceived political enemies. Gay people, liberals, women who are feminists, feminists in general, women who, even if they don't self-identify as feminist, are not what they would consider trad wives, you know? It's less about specific points and more about using rhetoric to shift narrative over time, as well as to keep their political allies and tools hyped up for elections. Beat Poet, thanks for 14 months. Discordant Vol, thanks for 29 months, says, oh look, I almost missed Nathan Bedford Fuckstick. I get it. I have to urinate real quick. So, be cool while I, do that. I have water. Cool. Be right back. I'm back. I think it's about time for a new chair. I keep putting this up, and like it'll slowly, like the hydraulic part doesn't work. So, everyone who's a fan of the chair is in its winter season, let's just say. So, enjoy the chair while you can. See, it's already. I felt it. It's going down. Just too much. By the way, I'm down. I think I already said this on stream. But I know you guys have told you when I've hit different weight loss goals, I finally got down 80 pounds. Down 80 pounds. Not done yet, but I'm over halfway there. That's for fucking sure, so that's nice. Do I have a new chair on the wish list? I don't. I have to look for chairs. I have no idea. I haven't looked in a long time. Chair donation stream next? Maybe at some point. By the way, I cleaned out my computer. I know we were having issues with streaming a while back for like 1 week. See, it keeps, I don't know if it's visible, but I felt it. But since I cleaned the computer, it's running a lot better. So hopefully we can hold off on me needing to get a new streaming computer anytime soon. Knock on wood.
For the ecosystem which has spent...
Can get a replacement pneumatic pump for the chair? Okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
Billions of dollars talking about the family, you would think they would take a little bit more issue with this. You weaken marriage by liberalizing divorce laws. Now you want to liberalize...
John should congratulate me, by the way, because at the beginning, John said how important physical health is to Christian nationalism or whatever stupid bullshit. I've lost 80 pounds, John, so I think God's on my side. Discordant Vol says, in my writings, the Fae of the Winter Court are the psychopomps of the Feywild. Even eternal lives must end. They also forge cold iron weapons for this task. It's pretty cool. Fucking love D&D. Hopefully, looks like I'll be in a new game soon. Excited. Chair is not a physical object. Chair is essence, a feeling. It'll move to the new chair. The spirit of this chair will move bodily to the new one when the time comes. Cidosaurus says, Cheerly, let's go to the Candy Mountain, Cheerly. Oh boy, we're both showing our age with that one. It's funny when I say shit like that. So old. I'm just turning 30. I know that's obnoxious. Hydrate. I hate doing obnoxious things that, like, I know other people find obnoxious, which, you know, inevitably you're gonna, especially on Twitch. So many people watching. You're gonna annoy people. But still. Anyway. It's alright. You'll get to hear me bitch about feeling old now when I'm almost 30, and if Twitch is still around in 20 years, you'll also hear it when I'm almost 50. So. Is most of my audience older than me? That makes sense.
Marriage laws so that anyone can get married, and you...
By the way, I should point this out. I'm gonna do a community post about this too. Sorry, I'm just thinking of a lot of, housekeeping, and also I took my ADHD meds, so my brain's working a little bit now. If anyone is missing or thinks that I'm not posting VODs to YouTube, they are, but because I'm also streaming to YouTube, they aren't under the videos tab, they're under the live tab. So if you've been missing, like, my streams, and you're like, why aren't they posted to YouTube? They are, they're just under the live tab instead of the videos tab. They're VODs under the live. So that's a thing. Baha's also been doing editing for me, which I really appreciate. She's got my previous John Doyle thing almost edited up, and some other stuff. So, like, stream segments and stuff are going to be more of a thing. So that's cool. Along with the shorts, of course. All right. Housekeeping taken care of. Back into it.
Expect this to, like, work out for you. You expect to conserve something. You know, well, no, because they're controlled opposition. But I did see this...
Do we have to start putting John on Tinfoil Tuesday?
Case recently where a woman who was a surrogate...
Xchair.com? That concerns me. Let me do this, because I'm curious, but also, I don't think you would send me a troll porn link. There's no way that that's actually just... It is. Wow, that is actually just a site to buy a chair. Okay. That's a terrible name. Did Elon make this chair website? Just a thought. I'll look at chairs later. Okay. Back to John.
Surrogate was diagnosed with breast cancer 25 weeks into the pregnancy. And so to get chemotherapy, she wanted to deliver the child prematurely so that everyone could have a chance to survive. And the
John, like, if you're gonna say that this is horrible or whatever, like, that sucks. But that's something that would be a discussion whether it was a surrogate or not. Like, if that happens and complications happen in pregnancy, there are decisions that need to be made. The horror isn't coming from the surrogacy. The horror is coming just from pregnancy is a scary, stressful time where unpredictable things can happen, and both the person who is, like, carrying the kid and the child are in potential danger. Like, that's a thing, John. It just seems like he's not aware, and he's acting as though these things are somehow specific to surrogacy, which just shows he has no idea what goes into actually being a parent or having kids or, like, having a pregnancy. It's just weird. Has he ever talked to a pregnant couple, ever? Mr. Whiskers says it's actually a genius name. You accidentally end up in the horny brain fog and realize you really do need a new chair.
two men who hired her...
I think all of you are more horny than me. Just a thought.
Didn't like this idea because they didn't want to deal with the health complications that may occur with a premature delivery, since typically babies are, you know, like an accessory to these kinds of people. And I get it.
No, they're not! Again, he's, like, basing this entirely off nothing. He's basing this off nothing. He's just saying it. He's just saying, all of these people, or most of them, consider the babies accessories, and he's basing this off literally Shane Dawson. What the fuck do you think Shane Dawson has to do with anyone else? What are you doing? This is nonsense. This is embarrassing, John. This is some of the worst material you ever put out. And I'm not even talking morally, because I feel like it's easy with John to get caught up in, like, the audacity of all the shit he's saying. I'm not shocked at this point. I'm not shocked when he says shit. We know it. He's a fucking crypto-fascist Nazi shit. We know. That's not shocking. What is this, like 2015? I'm shocked by people being Nazis on the internet? No, you see it all the time. What I am shocked by and I'm disappointed by is that his rhetoric and his videos have actually gotten worse over time. Like, he's lazy. Like, he has gotten lazy. And I know what this is like. This happens. And this is so funny that I'm even talking about this like I care, because I don't care about John Doyle, who he is today. I care about him as a person like I care about any person. I wish he would have an epiphany, have a Christmas Carol moment, and realize that everything he's done is for naught and evil and deal with his issues. But he probably won't. So, his actual life and his feelings are not, like, paramount in my head. I have other things to worry about. But I'm genuinely shocked. He can't even do, like, fascist propaganda well. I just don't get it. I don't understand. If you need to borrow any of Riefenstahl's material, Doyle, let me know. I'll lend you something and you can maybe learn a lesson or two about how to effectively do propaganda. Because what you're doing right now is just cringe.
You know, I had my Ridgeback from show dogs, but he's also a dog. Not someone I'm going to claim to love or be a father to. Well, no, I love him. He's a good boy. But anyways, you know, it's like...
Wait, what? New game? Wait, what? One sec.
You order prints, they don't come out right, so you're like, I don't want it, except it's a living person. So they said, no, we're not paying for a baby born before 38 weeks because of potential health issues, so you have to immediately terminate the pregnancy. She said, no, I don't want to do that. I'll just adopt him. Or if not me, I have an uncle who says that he'll adopt him. And then the guys were like, no, actually, we're going to demand a death certificate now. And so they're threatening legal action. The courts in California...
So if you don't like that situation, then that's a legal issue that needs to be taken care of, but it has nothing to do with them being gay?
Get involved.
Like, if you don't like these guys and if they're being shitbags, which it seems like it, that's a personal issue. That's not a sexuality issue, John. Fennikagami says, I've been missing this up to this point, but thank you, John, for also being offensive to my brother. He's neurodivergent and had a child out of wedlock and has partial custody of his daughter. Both he and his old girlfriend are on disability, and they're doing their best. I'm actually pretty proud of him, and John takes a piss all over him.
To save the day. That was close.
I'm uncomfortable.
And then the court says that while they can't force her to terminate the pregnancy, they can, at the request of the two men, force her to have life-saving care denied to the baby after he's delivered. Justice. So that's exactly what happened. The boy died on the table. The woman, whose name I believe is Brittany, said that the whole experience made her feel like a rented-out uterus. I don't know what she expected, but yeah, that's exactly what you were.
Like I said at the beginning, John is doing a thing where he takes negative experience or other anecdotes and extrapolates them outward. That's not a good argument, John. This is the propaganda. A little bit better than the other stuff. At least he's trying to give anecdotes. Again, it's not illustrative of general truths, but at least he's trying to make an argument, even if the argument is literally, look at this one instance. Me no like this instance, so me no want any. Discordant Vol says, castigation is easier than conversation for some people.
And it cost a life. So from the moment of your child's conception, he was a commodity. Did you try to take good care of the commodity? Sure. What, do we clap? Are we supposed to celebrate that? Now, a normal country would think, wow, if they were so ready to discard that baby boy, maybe that's indicative that they have no right to purchase children. I mean, they sound like terrible parents. Then again, though, a normal country probably wouldn't allow for purchasing children in the first place, so I guess we kind of get what we deserve. Deserved there. So yeah, I don't know what happened to those guys. They probably just got another surrogate. A normal country would also look at somebody like Shane Dawson, who has a history of saying that 6-year-olds are sexy, pretending to jerk off to pictures of 11-year-olds,
Yeah, I agree that Shane probably shouldn't have a kid. That would be a problem, I'd imagine, with a situation where a lot of money goes a long way. So that's a capitalism problem, John. That's an incentive set problem. I would probably agree Shane should not have kids. I would agree. Not a general issue for, I think, gay couples in general, though, because they're already being scrutinized quite heavily. Difference between them and, or whatever his name is, Shane Dawson, is that he's a millionaire. I imagine that made a hell of a difference.
To defend being attracted to children is just a fetish, admitting to having Googled child content. He's talked about having sex with his cat. It's called Naked Baby Sexy. He's admitted that he was molested as a child. We would maybe look at that and say,
so many things on that list, I'm like, okay, I get why this is concerning, but victims of sexual assault have children all the time, and the implication that they shouldn't is pretty gross. Like, a lot of people, like a statistically high number of people, have been sexually assaulted at one time in their life or another. Pretty fucked up to imply that people who have suffered that shouldn't have kids. That's fucked up. J.I. Lost says, I haven't heard anything from John in a long time, but I see he's still on his douchebag arc. Yeah. I'm not thinking it's ending anytime soon.
Okay, if anybody should not...
He did use the word admitted, too. That's interesting. I never thought... Thank you for pointing that out. The specific verbiage he used is telling. Admitted, as if it's something shameful to admit that you were a victim of, like, sexual assault as a child or at any point in your life. Jesus.
Not be able to purchase a child. But now he's got a pair of twin boys from a surrogate. Why do the gay guys always get little boys? Why is it never little girls? Someone should look into that.
First of all, I don't think that's true. But even if there was a statistical likelihood or a statistical slant that gay couples pick more boys, it's probably because they were boys, and therefore they feel they know how to raise boys better because they have that experience. I think that's a bit strange, personally. Like, I am of the opinion, and Baha and I have talked about this, like, I understand checking for, like, genetic problems and stuff that'll affect the quality of life of the like, child if they pick a specific embryo, but, like, picking boy or girl, if that is a thing that's ever done, I don't think that's cool. But I have no reason or knowledge that that's what happened here. Literally, they might have just had boys. Like, that's it. Fenekagami says, John, almost all the countries that agree with you are therefore normal to you. Do allow buying children. They often have legal child. I don't even know what countries you're referring to that he's referring to. Anyway.
It seems unfair. It's unegalitarian. And for the record, I'm not suggesting anything about this guy. I'm just saying there's a lot of boxes that are checked off here, like a comical amount of boxes.
Again, John, I really don't like Shane Dawson. I personally probably don't think he'll make a good parent. I think he's a shitty person. But if everyone that was a demonstrably shitty person but had not broken the law wasn't allowed to have kids, there'd be about half as many kids in the world. Like, let me give you an example too. My parents. My parents were bad parents, but I am also a human being that exists, and they didn't, like, need a test to have that kid. Right? I'm not saying people should have tests to say they should have kids, but I am saying if you were to somehow do some sort of totalitarian decision that you need a license to have a kid, it needs to be everyone and not arbitrary based on your weird bigotry. Like, you just can't. You can't start dictating that stuff. It's not good for anyone.
Also created 10 other human lives and just flushed them down the toilet, by the way. Great parents, because I guess they weren't optimal. And then they vlogged about it. Like, wow, how do I make murdering children, like, about me? How do I make content from this? Like, this is, then they're taking photos with the baby.
John, most people don't consider, like, choosing a specific embryo or certain ones being implanted and other ones not to be murder. Again, that is your personal narrative on the issue.
Where it's meant to simulate breastfeeding. They're posing in the bed, acting as though...
Again, there is no breastfeeding going on here. It is literally skin-to-skin contact, which is a very normal and a thing that babies need, is skin-to-skin contact. That's normal, and making it a perv thing is a you thing. If you look at this image and think there's anything perverted about it, you're the fucking issue.
So they just delivered these children.
It's illegal to choose based on sex in Canada and in the UK. That's good. I think that's a good thing.
Same way that Pete Buttigieg did when he got the babies. These are red flags. You'd think it should...
It's not. Why is it's a red flag to take pictures with your newborn children? In what universe? Again, it entirely comes down to him having the ick. That's it.
Be more difficult to purchase a human child than a firearm in this country. I say some silly things on the internet. Now I have to wait 3 days or just get totally denied from purchasing a firearm. These guys say things like this, do things like this, and you just walk right through the door. Do something.
John, what do you think he has done that is illegal that should prevent him from doing this? I don't like him either. If I was in charge of, like, an agency to adopt them a kid, I wouldn't agree to adopt them a kid unless, like, I got, you know, behind the scenes and it was very different than the stuff that's come out online. But that's not how society works. You as an individual don't get to decide arbitrarily, I don't like this person, they don't get to have kids. Like, that's not okay. Like, this is creeping so fucking close to eugenics. It's so gross. Kagami says, statistically, more boys are born than girls. It's like 1.05 boys for every girl. The population's evened out as people get older because boys have higher mortality. Yeah.
Something which nobody ever would have thought would have been considered normal practice, let alone some kind of right.
Is the problem that John doesn't understand, like, men having genuine feelings of, like, love? Like, and I don't mean romantic love. I mean, like, the love you might have, like, for your kid. Or, like, other people in general. Like, parental or even platonic love. It's like he can't understand them, so he's assuming a nefarious sexual dynamic that is not there. It's very weird. I feel like there was something else. Did I miss something?
Or entitlement, which
I'd agree, Baha.
is purchasing human children.
But that's a general issue with, like, kids online and how kids are used by parents for, like, influencer shit and, like, kids channels. That's a whole other issue.
To play advanced house. Human trafficking.
Advanced house. They're not playing house. They're married and have, like, kids. That's them being parents and having a house. It's not playing anything, John. I'm sorry it doesn't fit your personal definition of it, but it is what it is. Learn to live in a society where not everyone lives the way that you think is the ideal way. Like, it's so weird that conservatives feel that, like, their personal preferences should dictate what other people are allowed to do. It's so wild, and it only cuts that one way. Like, they assume the opposite, too. Like, John Doyle has said in this video, like, oh, people on the left or liberals would want me enslaved. No, John. If you want to go be a shitty person in your personal life, I don't care. I'd rather you not, just because generally I think fewer shitty people is better. But no, it's not illegal for you to be a piece of shit. What I don't think should be enforced is your shitty stuff that would hurt others. That's it. That's it. That's it. Imagine living in a world with people you disagree with and being civil and not trying to force things on other people other than the fact that you can't force things on other people. Discordant Vole says he thinks the non-het relationships are inherently evil and are the precursor to any wicked act they can connect to that. It's like every gay couple is the antagonist in an episode of SVU in their minds. Yeah.
Trafficking's perfectly legal as long as you're a homosexual and you live in a Western country. Like, you look up the definition of human trafficking.
Again, does John know that, like, surrogacy, usually the kids are at least genetically the kid of one of the parents?
Describes this, except it prefaces it with the unlawful act of blah, blah, blah. The only difference between the acts...
You want to know if John is even aware that Shane and Ryland are bio-parents to those embryos they made? I genuinely don't think he does. I don't even know if he knows that, like, Shane's husband is trans.
And the unlawful act...
Like, those kids are biologically their children. If you care about such a thing, you shouldn't. It doesn't matter. But yes, those children were made with their parts. Fennikagami, what do you want me to look up in Black's Law Dictionary?
Those words. Like, one is lawful, one is not. It's words on paper. Intrinsically...
Not trans? I thought that they were, and that he went by he, him. If not, I apologize. They had a surrogate, but I thought you just said, who am I thinking of? Oh, I'm thinking of an entirely different YouTuber who has a trans husband. I apologize. That's my fault.
Same. What is occurring is all the same.
Either way, still used their genetic material. You want me to look up child trafficking? Can do. Might just be under trafficking, but I'll try.
Now, if I were a robot, if I'm a pattern detecting entity, and I looked...
Oh boy. One sec. Gotta look for this.
At this story with a guy who's got a history making comments like this in a type of relationship which has a disproportionate pattern with certain behaviors like this, I might reach some conclusions which aren't very nice. And then laying in the bed too, acting like he delivered the baby.
1 second. I don't want to get too far in this without listening, and I can't listen to that and read at the same time. Boop, 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 boop. It's gonna be under trafficking, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, they don't have one specifically for child trafficking. But they do just have trafficking. Trading or dealing in certain goods and commonly used in connection with illegal narcotic sales. As children are not goods, they're not being trafficked, John. It'd be one thing if they got the kids and then the kids were treated as property, but they're not. So they're not.
It's such a crude mockery. You think that's a crude mockery? Wait till I tell you what they're trying to imply produced that baby. You ever see an exit only sign? Probably there for a pretty good reason, right? Well, some people like to ignore very obvious rules.
You're gonna make a comment about anal sex now?
Usually because they didn't have good parents. But the reason that they do those photo shoots is because they get off to it.
No, they don't! What? You think that what? This is a wild, insane claim.
They enjoy subverting and mocking what is natural. They think it's not.
John, literally, they just want to take pics with their newborn kid, you sick fuck. What is wrong with your nasty-ass brain? Holy hell. God, I hope John never has kids. Discordant Vole says there are only so many ways to say they're just hateful, fearful people, but this one has managed to turn a profit from it. He's just a little bitter jerk. He is indeed. Self-report? No kidding.
Naughty. They like the pride. They enjoy the mockery of it. And the children validate the relationship. If they wanted to be...
John needs therapy fucking badly if he really believes that. Like, if he's just using this as a propaganda rhetoric tool, whatever, another lie from John. But if he really believes that, he needs therapy years ago.
Parents, then they...
Let's see. Baja says, for clarity, Shane and Ryland both contributed sperm to the embryo creation. They ended up with 5 male and 1 female embryos from Shane and 5 female and 1 male embryo from Ryland. So they either picked 2 of Shane's bioembryos to implant, or 1 of Shane's and 1 of Ryland's since they have 2 boys. Gotcha. Makes sense.
They could just go and be parents, but the baby acts as an accessory to what they actually want, their true priority, which is to identify and behave in the ways that they do. So that's why they have to do the whole wholesome Chungus gay couple in a bed LARP. People have...
No, they're a family that have wanted children enough to spend a bunch of money or at least time doing this, John. They're happy. Is the only way that he can view the world through some weird perversion is the concept of familiar, like, love foreign to him, that he can't understand it as an end in and of itself? Oh my god.
Fetishes for pretending to be animals. You think they wouldn't have a fetish for subverting the institution of marriage? Of course they do.
Fucking
Imagine taking
what?
any of these people at their word. Why would you trust that? Why would you trust, well, they'll take it this far, but then they'll stop. They won't take it any further. We just want to step up and look after these poor foster kids. Give them a home. Oh, okay, sounds fair enough to me. Look at where that's trending now. And they even get preference.
Where's that trending now? What?
Actually, when adopting, because technically speaking, they're infertile. And then that is trending towards gay guys suing to have their surrogates covered.
What? Wait, what? I gotta go back. He's saying so many stupid things in a row. Give me a sec.
And look after these poor foster kids. Give them a home. Oh, okay, sounds fair enough to me. Look at where that's trending now. And they even get preference, actually, when adopting, because technically speaking, they're
What? Meek says, since John got this wrong, Pete and his husband adopted those kids. They didn't do surrogacy.
fertile.
They just adopted them right after the birth. That makes sense.
And then that is trending towards gay guys suing to have their surrogates covered by the American taxpayer, since technically speaking, they're infertile. And so to not give them that would be discrimination, since infertility...
You're getting mad about a lawsuit someone filed that isn't even adjudicated?
is defined.
This is like weak sauce.
As unprotected sex for 12 months with no conception. And yeah, no one wants to have a couple uncomfortable conversations. I truly struggle to think of something more disgustingly selfish than this. And I hate that word in politics. Oh, it's disgusting. It's very feminine. But
John, your entire political view is based on things you're personally disgusted with. Like, that's your whole thing, is that your primary, like, motivator in determining right or wrong is your initial visceral disgust. You've discussed that. ironically enough, during this video. Fun.
But I mean that sincerely. The level of selfishness on display here does evoke a disgust response at minimum. It actually makes me angry. It's very offensive.
Selfishness is when you decide to raise children, apparently.
And again, we're going to go through all of this in definitive levels of detail in the future. But what's more is that we've actually seen data from countries that have had...
Disgusting is feminine. What does that mean? He's using it in sort of like the Jordan Peterson way, where he's trying to symbolically link the symbolic meaning of the feminine to like chaos and evil. It's like pseudo-philosophical bullshit, basically.
had same-sex marriage since the beginning of this century. And something like 96% of gay people didn't even care to get married. And before that, no one was stopping...
What? Where? He just pulls things out of his asshole. I swear to God. Like, what is he doing?
Gay couples from getting married in private ceremonies. No one was stopping gay couples from doing what they do in the privacy of their own home.
Yes, they were, John. Yes, they were. What are you talking about? There are so many legal things that have to do with actual marriage that were kept from same-sex couples. It was illegal to be a same-sex couple in most of the US not that long ago. It wasn't until like the late 70s, I believe, or early 70s, I don't remember. It was in the 70s where it was taken off like the DSM as like a mental illness. The idea that there wasn't discrimination against like queer people is so ahistorical. It's frustrating. It's frustrating and comical. Like, what do you do with it? It would be like someone saying, I don't know, the moon is full of spaghetti. Like, it's so wrong. Where do you even begin? Like, it's an obviously deceitful statement. It's not in good faith, or at least you hope not, because if it is, it says such horrible things about the person that says it, it feels mean. Discordant Vol says, the only bad feeling I recognize is anger. All others must be converted to anger before I deign to experience them. John, a grown-up.
Like we were told. So what you learn when you actually study the real history of the gay rights movement, which can we all agree, by the way, like that's how we got to where we are in terms of the LGBT stuff, right? We know that. That's not my opinion. That's just knowledge.
That rights were fought for and won? Correct. Pterodona says, sodomy laws, remember those, John?
But what you learn when you study the actual history of that movement is that it was never about privacy or any of the other bumper sticker platitudes that you hear about. It's all the same. It's about normalization and validation, promotion, and enforcement, ultimately.
No, it's literally just about being cool with other people who live differently than you. That's it. I'm not asking you to feel any specific way about something, but you need to be tolerant of it, at minimum. Like, above that, cool. But, like, you can be a hateful shit. You just can't enforce it legally on people. That's it. That's what you're salty about.
Why do they want to get married if they don't tend to be interested in marriage at all?
What do you mean they don't tend to be interested in marriage at all? That's such a broad statement. That's a false... Like, your premise is wrong. Your premise there, if whatever statement you're about to make, oh, gay people don't want to be married ever... So but they are getting married, therefore nefarious something. Your premise is wrong. You think if queer people didn't want to get married, why did they spend decades fighting for it, John? He's such an idiot. God.
Let alone staying married or
like, I don't know what is John's future? Is he gonna get married someday? Is anyone interested? Like, I'm...
Virtually no cases even staying committed to each other. Why do they want to...
What the fuck? Again, he's just saying things. What are you talking about?
Children.
Does John understand that homophobic memes and stone toss memes aren't citations? Like, that's not real life. Your bigoted, like, preconceptions aren't reality.
Why do they want to order children? Normalization and validation. Children are treated as trophies to validate those relationships, to subvert the standards of the nuclear family, which they hate in so many cases because it failed to protect
Don't do that, Jaro. I hate that shit.
them. And so
I hate when someone's homophobic and people immediately jump to, he must be secretly gay. It puts the onus of homophobia on homosexual people. It implies that straight people are incapable of hate, and it must only ever be gay people hurting each other. Like, no. Not the case. I think that's a harmful trope.
resent it. So the bottom line is that if you do this, you're depriving your child of the right to his mother and to be made out of love. Like, what kind of a foundation is that? Cowards want to avoid the extent of this. Well, it has nothing to do with gay people. It's about surrogacy. I generally agree, but I think you're being a bit dishonest. I think we're not trying to make America great again right now, because does that mean that you're against surrogacy, but you're totally fine with a gay couple adopting a child? Really? Even when they're given preference for being
I'm fine with both of them.
technically infertile? Look, I agree. All surrogacy is bad. But can we acknowledge there's a difference here? Can we be adults? Or are you saying that love is love and it doesn't matter if it's a straight couple or a gay couple? It's all the same, right? There's no differences. Love is love. Here's the truth that people don't want to touch. Gay couples will never be able to meet the standard of straight couples. It's impossible. There might be
What? Do you know how low the bar is for a lot of parents? Holy shit, John.
overlap in some cases, but for the most part, it's entirely separate. It's a totally different category. With two men adopting a child,
Like, I had parents who were straight cis man and woman, and it was horrible. It had nothing to do with their, like, sexualities or genders. They were just shitty people and bad parents. Like, why are you in any way combining the ideas of someone's sexuality and their morality? It's nonsense. Tea with Goblin says Australia legalized gay relationships state by state. The last state was Tasmania in 1993. Sodomy laws technically still existed but were not enforced, so two gay men had an affidavit signed to affirm that they had done the butt sex, then marched into a cop shop and said, "We're gay, arrest us," thus was the impetus for the law changing. That's pretty cool, that they were willing to go through that just to get that shit off the books.
how can you provide an example of femininity if you're not a woman? I mean, not that they adopt.
Do you think that people don't have other people in their lives? John, what in the world is wrong with you that you think that children don't interact with other adults? Like, what?
Little girls, but you know what I mean? Like, or if you're a man, I mean, how can you provide an example of a masculine identity if you yourself don't have
Do you
one?
think that the only identity that you consider yourself is A, your gender identity, and B, that you can't form it from anyone other than your parents? That's a really unfortunate belief. Certainly your parents are the primary example in your youth because they're the people you make contact with the most, you have most interactions with, at least you'd hope. But unfortunately, not every parent is good, so people look to other role models for examples of things, not just about gender, what it means to be a man or a woman or non-binary or whatever, but what it means to be a good person, to be a good friend or partner or whatever. This idea that everything you believe and are comes from your parents is so strange and untrue.
one. Now, this is where it gets tricky. You might be a man in the sense that you take fitness very seriously, you excel in your career, you do well for yourself. A lot of gay men check these boxes, especially the ones who make a lot of money to then spend on children. But what actually causes them to be gay? What causes homosexuality?
The term cause implies a malfunction. I don't think that's true, the way he said it at least. Is there some, like, independent factor that decides if people are gay or straight or whatever? Who knows? Maybe someday we'll know, but it doesn't matter either way. It doesn't fucking matter, John. Discordant Vol says, as you can see, we have tied the quality of straight couples percentage to the kilogram standard, iridium bar, and it is now the internationally recognized unit of love, LV.
They've never found a gene for it, crazy enough. What it actually is, it's always an artificial disruption in
No, it's not. That is such an absurd statement to make.
a young boy's natural development into his masculine.
Interesting that he's only talking about, again, young boys. So concerned about gay men, not and all lesbians, or bisexuals, or pansexuals. So weird.
Be gay. What causes homosexuality? They've never found a gene for it, crazy enough. What it actually is, it's always an artificial disruption in a young boy's natural development into his masculine identity.
That is a completely unsubstantiated statement.
There's psychological literature on this that has been censored and shelved away, like the ending of Raiders of the Lost Ark.
From when, John? Where? Point to it. Why was it shelved? Was it peer-reviewed and found to be bad? Like how science works?
But it exists, and it was never disproven. It was declared offensive, basically, by activists infiltrating the American Psychological Association, many of whom were openly homosexual, to do precisely this,
And as we all know, homosexuals are incapable of doing social sciences.
which they now brag about using your tax dollars 50 years later. And we'll elaborate on this in the aforementioned dissertation.
Oh, he's literally talking about in the 70s when it was removed from the DSM. Oh my goodness.
You baby birds, do not worry, but it's not genetic. There are some biological factors that can make you predisposed towards manifesting homosexual attraction and behavior, such as your prenatal hormone exposure, but ultimately, it will not manifest without some sort of environmental influence. And so,
like, you're not, how are you justifying that? Like, I'm in awe of his unwillingness or lack of, like, concern to cite anything. He's not even trying. He can just say whatever he wants and his idiot audience will lap it up. Good God. Overthought says, the whole use of cause is implying that there's something wrong with being homosexual. So gross. Oh, yeah.
So, you've now given this child a permanent identity crisis. You can never...
No, John. Actually, identity crises come when people aren't allowed to be the thing they are because society tells them it's evil. Discordant Vole says, there it is, claiming the existence of homosexuality as a result of childhood sexual assault. John gets the prize, a disdainful sigh. Thanks for the bits. 65% to level 1 in a hype train. Tea with Goblins says, my mother watched Labyrinth when she was pregnant with me, and now I'm a horrible bisexual goblin.
Never loved that child. I mean, you love that child insofar as he makes you feel like a parent, but love is sacrificial, and if you truly love that child, you would not have rented his mother's womb and then taken the child.
What in the world? Stone Corbell, thanks for gifting us up.
Away from her so that you can be a father. You're not actually a father. I don't know what you are. I don't know
a father
that I care enough to figure it out, but I know you're not a father.
Like, you know what I mean? It's so much derision. He acts like he's like, I don't even like using the word disgust, it's feminine, but then his entire argument here is clearly entirely based on his visceral disgust. It's entirely him having fee-fees that he doesn't like, and therefore it makes him mad and he has to do an hour-long video about it. Jesus.
You should have sacrificed your desire for the child, but it was the other way around. So you're not a father. And I know that you know that because a father's first and deepest instinct is to protect his kids and to facilitate their well-being. And from the moment of that child's...
How did your father fail you that made you turn out like this, John?
Conception. You not only ignored that, you did the exact opposite, all in service of yourself. This child was not conceived out of love, let alone marriage or something natural. You commissioned...
Wait, did you just imply marriage is natural? Oh my God.
His conception out of selfishness and perversion. Literally, from the moment the life was created, it was never about the well-being of the child.
Yes, it is. People, whether they're two men, two women, a man, a woman, non-binary, whatever, people often, not something I want, but people want kids. They want to continue the continuity of humanity through raising a child. So they do that through surrogacy if they are able and want to. What don't you get about that? It's not perverse. It's not evil. It's not selfish. Wanting to have a child in and of itself is not a selfish or unselfish act. It is simply an act. Why you do it makes it selfish or unselfish. I don't understand where you're getting this idea that it's inherently selfish other than just, again, you don't like gay people. That's it. Sidosaurus says bits for the hype train. J.I. Lost says John's entire outlook on anything outside of himself and his views are arrogant and condescending. And Mr. Whiskers says, oh snap, we hypin'.
Only about your desires, which apparently are worth the price of depriving that child of a mother's love and warmth. You commissioned a life for the purpose of robbing him of that. That's
the implication that I don't agree with the implication whatsoever, John. I just don't. Mr. Whiskers, thanks for gifting us up.
The first thing to happen to this child. It was your plan for that to happen.
The first thing that this child will have is being known that they were wanted. That's not a bad thing, John. That's a good thing. Mr. Whiskers, thanks for gifting a sub.
Logical parents, I mean, it's all, you know it. Stop being a materialist. Stop being a dork. You know, this is spiritual. This transcends our comprehension of existence.
Again, he can't have good arguments, so he has to gesture at some sort of supernatural thing to justify his beliefs. Literally, it's just your feelings, John, and you can't justify them, so you're going, it's spiritual. I'm sure it is, buddy. Keep going. Discordant Vole says, besides, if the kid is shown love and raised well, then the motives are irrelevant. I hate, deontology, I swear. Peep Lord says, Hannah, what are you saying? Marriages aren't natural. You didn't have to take Baja into the government forest and harvest a marriage from the contract tree. Jurisdictions vary. We actually had to go into a marriage bog.
Every child has a right to their mother and to their father, but especially to their mother. Dad.
I don't even understand what you think that means, practically speaking. How is that a right, John? How do you enforce that right? What are you talking about?
Dads have been ditching kids since the beginning of time. I'm not saying that's right. I'm just saying the idea of a child being sold to two men and being deprived of his mother, maybe his mother volunteered to sell him, like that is yet again a whole new level of man-made horror beyond my comprehension.
John, they are literally gestating the child for them.
We've got this weird belief that we're like entitled to live any life we want to live by simulation. I'm entitled to have blonde hair, so I dye it. I'm entitled.
Yeah, you can do that. Be blonde if you want. That's cool. Stone Corbell says, what about all the families where the mothers died in childbirth, which was very common back in the day? How's that for natural?
Entitled to have big boobs, so I get plastic surgery.
John, if anyone wants to do those things and they're available and they can do them, I don't care. Who cares? Who cares? Why do you care what other people do? Fenekagami says, John, a larger number of heteroparenthood is selfish. They want the child for legacy, dream fulfillment, some weird identity thing, getting their parents off their back, or some weird holy war thing. Even if the original motive was selfish, real love can still come from it. Believing straight people aren't awful to children again proves he's never interacted with parents in his real life. Nemesor, thank you for gifting 20 tier 1 subs again. God, you did that the other day too. Thank you so much. Incredibly generous with our community. Thank you.
But if you can't become a parent naturally, then the question
hydrate
becomes, are you equally likely as, say, a typical couple to parent this child successfully? If not,
why do you think they're not? Kind of begging the question there. Like, why do you assume they are not?
Are you more likely to do it competently or incompetently? What if your likelihood to manifest problematic behaviors is significantly greater?
Wow, we used the word problematic.
Ignoring even that, what if there's virtually no chance that your child will develop normally and will always be longing to...
Well, John, then you should demonstrate that with evidence, and we can talk about it. Until then, you probably need to get a pillow, maybe a body pillow to hug to deal with some of these feelings. I believe in you, champ. You got this.
Have his mother and his father present. Children who grow up in these households have a 25% chance of being at some point forced to have sex against their will.
I would love to know where you're getting the statistics on that.
25% chance of contracting an STI, which matches suspiciously well with the previous figure. There's a 29% chance that they'll end up identifying.
That did not look like an official thing. Let's take a look. New Family Structures, Research, and the No Differences claim Anna Samuel. Let's see. Anna Samuel. New Family Structures. Let's see where this is from. Trying to see where the original thing is from. Trying to find out where this was published and if it was even peer-reviewed. Yeah. 26% to level 5. What is the public discourse? Journal of the Witherspoon Institute. What's the Witherspoon Institute? The Witherspoon Institute. Conservative think tank in Princeton, New Jersey. The Witherspoon Institute is a conservative think tank. Wow, okay. Witherspoon Institute opposes abortion and same-sex marriage and deals in embryonic stem cell research, constitutional law, and globalization. In 2003, it organized a conference on religion in modern societies. In 2006, Republican Senator Sam Brownback cited with the Witherspoon document marriage. Okay. So they literally exist for the political purpose of pushing forward nonsense pseudoscience.
All right, it's time to do some
about social issues that Republicans are mad at. Called that shit.
which matches suspiciously well with the previous figure. There's a 29.
How much I want to bet that John says straight couples can't be bad. People say that, and it ticks me off. My parents are straight, and you know what that got me? A debilitating fear that people do not truly want me. My ability to regulate my own emotions is permanently damaged because I had been emotionally neglected. Being a good parent takes effort and care, and none of that is tied to straightness or blood relations.
9% chance that they'll end up identifying as LGBT, 24% chance that they'll be suicidal. There's significantly more.
I feel like 24% isn't, whatever. Why am I even discussing it? It's a hog shit article.
That they'll end up identifying as LGBT, 24% chance that they'll be suicidal. They're significantly more likely to experience depression and trouble with future relationships. And again, this is obviously true. And you see similar.
What do you mean it's obviously true?
Though less significant trends with
Sorry, Discordant Full, if I missed your bits. It all comes from the viewpoint that everyone else has to justify their existence to him. He's the hegemonic position and can't imagine not being favored. Something veil of ignorance, yeah?
Parents, adopted parents, the further you get away from the
40
nuclear family,
seconds left on the hype train.
the more problems.
That's not a nuclear family, that's a polycule, John.
Problems arise, obviously. And we've discussed before the problems with what is referred to as gay marriage. Not even like the arguments against it, but I mean like the dynamics of these relationships, the rates of being open relationships, the number of sex partners on average, the length of time that these things even last on average. If the average American, here's what I'll say. If the average American knew what goes on, they would be like, what the heck? Wait a minute, buddy, hold on, what? That's why they had to make their slogan literally equality, saying,
John, do you know how many instances of people being molested by their straight parents I could bring up? A lot. It's always a fucking tragedy when children are abused. I experienced sexual abuse myself as a kid. To be clear, not my dad or anything. I know I've like brought him up before, but I want to be clear. But like, you specifically going and trying to find gay couples who have done terrible things is desperate. In general, when there are instances of childhood sexual abuse, it is most often people around the kid. Their parents, uncles, aunts, family members, whoever. Cherry-picking instances of this happening with same-sex parents is such bullshit, and you know it. I know even you don't know I know that even you know that's not how it works, but you want to use this for your stupid ass audience, and it's frustrating. It's incredibly frustrating.
love is love. We're just kind of silly. It's equal. It's the same. Just a little bit silly. That's why the well put together couples are actually more subversive. The ones who present themselves well, the quiet gay couple in the Vineyard Vines pullover, they're just so nice. They're just a little bit silly. People's entire perception is informed by what they see on television. The image of the well put together gay couple, it's actually more subversive than the outright degenerate gay people.
You're citing a gay couple from a sitcom that started like 15 years ago, John. Like, you're talking about new and subversive. This is Modern Family. When did Modern Family come on the air? Like 2008? I don't even know. Benekagami says John is a waste of H2O, lipids, air, protein, DNA, glucose, and space. 2009? Okay.
Because it convinces normal people, oh, I guess it is pretty much the same.
John, it is.
Accepting these things, getting to where we are now, that didn't happen because of pride parades. It happened because of the media pushing the image of the clean
I love when they show pride parades. It's always trying to start kink and pride discourse, which we're not doing, by the way. Captain Squid says degenerate. Okay, the mask is definitely off now. Oh, he uses that all the time.
Gay guy. Now people think there's no overlap, and then they get confused when they see people getting canceled for saying, well, hey, we probably shouldn't have furry BDSM demonstrations at family-friendly pride events. And they wrote about this, too, in their activist manifestos, how they could take advantage of the straight male tendency to want to protect, the straight female tendency to want to empathize with, and use it to forward their agenda, which in conclusion means that if you disagree with anything that I've said, it's because you've fallen victim to gay propaganda. But it's true. I mean, according to, the American College of Pediatricians, homosexual couples...
Again, this is the propaganda outlet. This is the right-wing think tank thing that pretends to not be, that sounds like the other thing.
Provide a far less stable and safe environment for children. They've noted that the violence among homosexual partners is 2 to 3 times more common than among married heterosexual couples, and homosexual partnerships are significantly more prone to dissolution than heterosexual marriages, with the average homosexual partnership only lasting something like 2 to 3 years. They're also far more likely than heterosexuals to experience mental illness, substance abuse, suicidal tendencies, shortened lifespans, and basically they've concluded that given the current body of research, it's inappropriate and
again, I can't take any of this seriously because it's from literally like a right-wing think tank. It's probably all fucking manufactured. Not even gonna address it. John's bullshitting and pulling from a propaganda piece while trying to talk about other people doing propaganda. Ironic.
potentially hazardous to children and dangerously irresponsible to change the age-old prohibition on homosexual parenting, whether by adoption, foster care, reproductive manipulation, and this position is rooted in the best available science. Does that sound like a good environment for children?
Okay, good. Now read something from actual psychiatrists, psychologists, and scientists.
We have to protect the needs of children over the desires of adults, in conclusion, let alone adults who have no business raising a child. Well, how can you be pro-life and anti-surrogacy? Well, it's not about you. It's about giving life to the babies. Yeah, I'm pro-life because pro-life is just good marketing for not wanting babies to die. It does not literally mean I just want there to be infinite people in the world, and much less to have them made to order and stripped away from their birthright. The issue of surrogacy has little to do with life, actually. It's counterintuitive, but you think that, and then you go, okay, well, how can the left support abortion, which is about killing babies, and then also support surrogacy, which is about creating babies? It doesn't really...
Man, it's almost like we care about consent and people having the right to do things consensually with their bodies. That's not hard to understand, for the fuck's sake. Are they really this incapable of understanding the perspective of others? That they don't understand that people aren't going, yeah, I want abortions to be legal because I just want them to throw all the fetuses in a fucking meat grinder. Like, no! People want people to have bodily autonomy and the right to choose their own medical decisions. That's it. That's it.
Really makes sense. And yeah, I mean, ignoring how many typically die in the process of surrogacy, like we mentioned earlier, what matters to them isn't so much life. It's being able to do whatever they want. It's playing God. It's total...
It's not playing God, John. Not everyone believes in God. Like, again, you are free to have that view. If that's what you think that is. I think you're wrong, but you're free to have that view. But you're ascribing that view to other people, which they don't have. You're making up a straw man of what things people are thinking when they're not. That you shouldn't do.
Feminist domination. And frankly...
How much do I think of what he says is a grift? That's hard to say. If it's a grift, I don't think he's very good at it.
There's a lot of really...
Like, his channel, I don't think has gotten bigger in years. Like, he's pretty much just pulling from the same audience at this point. Mr. Whiskers says, my dad takes me to a wet t-shirt contest at 12 years old, and that's okay, but if someone has leather and a leash on it, it's destruction of society as we know it. Whatever, buddy.
Stupid sentiment on the right is just completely... separated from reality. And the worst part of it is that included in the tenets of it are that if you don't agree, you're the brainwashed one. You're paid off by the World Economic Forum. And a lot of it is just this really low IQ conspiracy theory stuff about the globalists being anti-human. Because if it's an anti-human thing, then we can all team up and unite against them. No exclusion necessary, so long as you're not evil. If you're a human, you can be on the team as well. If it's an anti-human thing, then it's evil and satanic, and we have to unite together, you know, like in a movie. I don't think it's an anti-human thing. It's more that they're anti-nature, or even post-human. They hate excellence, and they hate virtue. They hate childbirth.
No, your ideas of excellence and virtue do not fall into line with our ideas of these things. There's a miscommunication effectively happening if you're speaking in good faith here. Bold assumption. Everything you think you understand about the way someone like I thinks is wrong. You are ascribing motivations that are not there. You are not going to understand people different than you if you don't actually listen to what they are saying about what they believe and why. Like, it's just a fact.
Not because it creates life, but because it's natural and because it's beautiful. If they were anti-human, they would hate surrogacy, but they don't. They love it because it's unnatural. It seeks to conquer nature. I'll put it this way.
It doesn't conquer nature any more than your glasses conquer nature, or low blood pressure medication, like, conquers nature. It's a medical procedure. What?
Anti-human people worked harder for in the last few decades, preventing nice, wholesome, quiet communities from forming, or preventing crowded slums from forming. If I were anti-human, I would probably crack down on the one with the most people. But maybe it's not about people. It's almost an egalitarian word, isn't it? Right? People. It puts us all equal, right? When I say I'm pro-human,
It's a way of describing all people, yep.
I mean that to say I am in favor of human flourishing and beauty and excellence and accomplishment. If they're anti-human, it's because they are opposed to that. But if it were just defined as like literally millions of blob people just all existing somewhere, some ugly, disgusting communist city, some 15-minute city or whatever, they would love that. They would get off to that.
Again, no, people having, like, choice and being treated fairly and being able to do what they want is a pretty big part of, like, discourse. So if you want to meet on that term and actually talk about it, cool. Until then, enjoy the fan fiction.
Or they'll say, well, they're not only anti-human, they're eugenicists. What? Anti-human eugenicists? Eugenics, I don't know anything about that. What do I look like to you? Some ancient Greek philosopher? Look, we should be careful with that word, eugenics. But you know what the other side of that coin is that we should really pay some more attention to since it's just running buck wild right now? Dysgenics. Artificially subsidizing people who otherwise would not have lots of children.
Oh boy. Oh no, we're just straight up doing it. We're just straight up doing it. We're just straight up doing it. Oh god. Oh god. He's doing it, eugenics. He's doing eugenics. He's doing it. He's doing it. He's doing it.
Into having lots of children, transferring wealth away from the productive and generally polite and law-abiding members of society to people who are the complete opposite of that.
Dog whistle, dog whistle, dog whistle, dog whistle.
So that they can have 7 or 8 kids.
Dog whistle,
what do you think
dog whistle.
The ripple effect of that is going to look like when you've got a society.
You mean like Elon Musk? Is he talking about Elon Musk here?
That is structured to disincentivize, to make low status, to make unattractive starting families and having children.
Literally, he's describing eugenics. He just wants eugenics, where people he doesn't like and thinks are inferior are disincentivized from having children. Jesus fucking Christ.
But only to a certain part of the population. To the rest, well, we're actually going to take money from those people. We're going to give it to you guys to breed like rabbits. And we've got open borders so we can do the same for illegal aliens. What happens in that scenario? Fast forward 20 years. What does that country look like? We shouldn't...
Weird, your dog just started barking like crazy.
Artificially control for characteristics in people. Hey, I'm not saying that we should, but we are. Literally, as a matter of policy, we are.
No, we're not. No, we are not.
Or just in the opposite direction. It is evolving, but backwards. So somebody's doing it. It's not like neutral. It's just going in the opposite direction from what you think. Maybe we should start talking about that.
This is a justification that people use for eugenics and, like, ethnic cleansing shit is being like, whoa, I'm not doing that. I just want to fix the thing that's already happened. Yeah. This is full-on Nazi rhetoric. This is disgusting.
Want to know why people aren't having kids? Because anytime you go somewhere in public, it's like you can't even recognize it. You go to the airport, you go to a shopping mall, you go to an amusement park, you go downtown to have dinner, watch a show, any place in the country where people are gathered, there are too many people, and it sucks. It throws off the vibe. Why aren't people having kids? Yeah, the economy's bad. People have always had families, though, throughout history, even throughout circumstances that are...
Video link if anyone wants it. Oops, wrong button. Try that again.
Far worse than what we have now. Unbelievably worse than what we have now. Okay, I've got one. What are the fertility rates looking like for people living under occupation? Are they rushing
Really, John? Really?
to have children? Are they rushing to start families? What's the line? Noble creatures refuse to breed in captivity.
John, people are poor. People are incredibly poor. And I understand what you're saying, like, well, people back in the Dust Bowl had kids. Yes, contraception wasn't as widely available, nor was sex education, family planning, forethought. People either A, decide they don't want to have kids. People like me, just not something I want. Just in my future, don't want kids. That's fine. I don't dislike kids. Kids are great. I just don't want to have one myself. And that's fine. Other people maybe would want kids, but are waiting for a more favorable situation, economically, socially, whatever. You cannot say that, well, Let me imagine a hypothetical where we're under occupation by some enemy force. People would have less kids. Therefore, that's what's happening now. Your entire ideology is based on fan fiction. You're writing stories about stuff that isn't true and making decisions based on it. That's horrifying. Discordant Vol says, and kids died of random stuff all the time back then. You needed backups. Mr. Whiskers says, kids were your retirement plan back then, too. Yep.
Activity. Maybe there's something to be said about that. Is that the whole problem? No, wouldn't claim that it is. But it's certainly something that's being omitted from the current discourse surrounding the
Because it's stupid, John. It's not being talked about because that's a stupid thought.
issue. And do I even trust that people will realize this consciously? Maybe, but like we said, the tools to articulate the feelings surrounding what they're experiencing in this country have, for the most part, been stripped away from them. So instead, they might say, well, it's because of the economy. Well, I'm just not ready, whatever reason. But those experiences do have effects on people. There's no way that they don't. You go out and you feel like a stranger in your own country, like an alien. That doesn't exactly make you excited.
Do you feel that way, John? I don't think most people feel that way. I think you're just xenophobic and racist. Like, I think that's it. I think you are assuming because you go outside and you see people different than you and it makes you uncomfortable, you are assuming most people feel that way when most people don't really give a shit.
Excited to make moves that would dig your roots deeper into conquered territory. And this just continues because our government just keeps importing millions of people every year. So there's no natural rebalancing. I would almost prefer that, honestly. There's fewer people, but at least they're Americans. You know, like 50 years ago when our country's population was about half of what it is now. Wow, what a terrible place to live. Must have been real bland, a real ghost town. Certainly not the height of Western civilization, which produces a nostalgia that every American resonates with. And
that nostalgia is largely based on media output and not the reality of the situation most people were in during that time period. If your entire view of the 1950s comes from TV and movies, you don't know about the 1950s. Because that's media, and media doesn't tell you the whole picture of what's going on. It tells you a picture that is being made to tell you a specific story.
That every conservative movement tries to capture in some form, even if they just ultimately betray the people who it resonates with in the first place. Yeah, you can have enrichment, or you can have lower home prices and less traffic.
John, in the 1950s, union membership was the highest it's ever been. So we should probably, like, do that then, right?
I'll take the second one, please.
Penikagami says, frankly, I'm a lot of ways. It's harder now to be poor than it was back then. There were more communities back then to fall back on. You could barter. Demands of living was less dependent on money. I'm not saying poverty was easy back then, but in some respects, multiple child was a boon, even if you were poor. It's not now. Yeah, the way I would think of it is like, let's say you're living on a farm and you're either a subsistence farmer or you farm and sell some for money. If you have kids, certainly there's, and I'm speaking strictly on the economic aspect. I'm not talking about the real human emotions and love you feel for your kids and stuff. Just on a practical, cynical level, you run a farm, kids at first, sure, liability, you got another mouth to feed, but when they get old enough, they can start providing labor for the farm, helping out, you know? So they're not simply something that costs you money, they help improve the productivity of your living situation of your farm. Nowadays, and it's good that children can't work, to be clear, but the way that society has evolved, children are basically liabilities economically indefinitely until, because life is so much more complicated now, they grow up, they go through schooling, high school, maybe college, some sort of career training, and then they are able to support themselves, hypothetically at least. It's a very different situation. Peeplord says, anyone else want to come out with a line of specific hair care and beauty products? We can do skincare products catered specifically to skin types. We can make it our first line. No, no, abso-fucking-lutely not. Is that the second joke you made today that made me go, no, watch it. Watch it. Not cool. I know you're making a joke because he said it, but like, come on. Know where the line is, people. Know where the line is. No jokes about actual disasters or eugenics or anything like that. Come on.
But what solutions are we offered? Even from the based and trad right. I'm seeing a lot of 32-year-old women telling the boys that they just need to man up and put a baby in me. I know I went through a phase, okay? I didn't know any better. I was taken advantage of by degenerate men. But now...
John, your citation here is a trad wife TikToker making up fan fiction. See what I mean? Like, this isn't based on a real thing. This is a thing a different conservative made up that he's commenting on like it's a real thing. They construct an alternate fictional reality. Peoplord says, here's the last of my bits to say sorry. Also, the number is a pure coincidence. Sorry, Hannah. Just be careful. Just be careful.
I'm saved by the grace of Christ, and I'm ready to settle down with a good man who doesn't smoke or drink or play video games or gamble. That all, by the way, just means you can't hang out with your friends. I don't know if you've learned that lesson yet, but that's what that means. You get to stay at home with her and cuddle. And who wants to marry me. Wow, that sounds really great. I'm so happy for you. God bless you. And then you just slowly back away. It's like you're spelunking. You find an old stick of dynamite or something. You just slowly back away. It's going to take a little bit more than that. The answer to restoring families is not just telling people to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. You have to understand the psychology of the average person. That's what we're working with. That's what we're looking to correct. And we have to be very specific with what the word family means, because otherwise you've got guys working for conservative media outlets talking about my personal news. Bro, that is not your child. Hell yeah, brother. That's pro-humanity. 2 strong conservative fathers in a conservative household that will vote Republican. You know, there have been several...
How much longer? Like 15 minutes?
Cases.
And speed it up. He's already going fast, but I would like this to be over too. Let's go 1.5. Discordant Vol says, no, John, grab it, please.
Of these people now working for conservative media companies, right-wing media companies, organizations, whatever. And then there's God knows how many of these stories happening behind the scenes, because these companies employ lots of these types of people who aren't necessarily public figures. They just work behind the scenes in different capacities. So I just want to spell out very clearly.
Gay people? These types of people? Good God.
Clearly what that means and why this is so sinister. When this happens, you as a right-wing media company are facilitating a transfer of dollars from your audience, who is ostensibly well-meaning, Christian, patriotic audience. You're facilitating a transfer of dollars from their pockets into the pockets of men who purchase children. That's what that is. That's what's actually taking place.
Or as normal people would call it, paying for IVF or surrogacy.
The money that
IVF in surrogacy, I guess.
They spend in purchasing those children and taking them away from their mothers. Those dollars were earned by hardworking, normal, likely Christian American families. And then they gave you those dollars. They gave that to your company because they like the work you're doing. They like to think that you're representing their voice. And you take those dollars, you skim a little off the top for yourself, and you give the rest to an open homosexual who takes those dollars and rents out.
An open homosexual? He said that with the stank of slurs. That was so bad. Ashley One Up says you possibly can't play this for copyright, but it does probably encapsulate how John feels. Oh yeah, I can't play that. No. Can't and wouldn't. Because also Family Guy. I'm not a fan.
Out a woman's womb and keeps the child for himself and another man. That's actually what's happening here. It's actually worse than surrogacy in itself, because it's surrogacy that was paid for by the labor of well-meaning American patriots. You're the middleman. Money was taken out of their household.
John, do you know how the economy works? Money goes from people to people all the time. Are you that concerned about the morality of what's happening with your money? And that's outside of your whole bullshit about just being homophobic and thinking it's evil when it's not. But, like, if you're concerned about where your money goes in one thing, oh boy, wait until you hear about literally how the entire economy works.
And it was put into a household that would take children away from other households, or plan to, or use their platform to promote and normalize a lifestyle, which quite often includes that. Like, that is what is happening here. That's why it's so repulsive, because these companies are behaving in a way that is a complete betrayal of people who support them. And then they celebrate the announcement. What a slap in the face. Moreover, what do you think the cost benefit looks like with having these LGBT conservative influencers? Who's winning right now? How many LGBT people were really just not getting it? And then they saw a gay guy say that, like, a flat tax is probably a good idea, until a gay person gave them permission to, like...
John, it's, again, he's talking about this conspiratorially, like there's a puppet master at the top orchestrating public opinion. John, literally there are just gay people that exist and live in the world and get jobs, and unfortunately, some of them are right-wing and have shitty opinions. But, like, that happens, and then they're hired by other shitty right-wing organizations to espouse those things. It's not an evil plan. They're not infiltrating. These are gay people that just happen to agree with right-wing policy.
Like, what, vote Republican? People that will only vote for us if we expressly validate their identities. These are the people we want. These are the real movers and shakers. Take that versus what it does to normalize these identities and these behaviors and these lifestyles on the right. If you could quantify that, how many people do you think woke up on the issues because of one of these characters versus people on our side being hypnotized into thinking, oh, yeah, I guess it doesn't really matter, because they see so many of these people.
Hypnotized?
People who, yeah, they vote Republican. And the worst part, honestly, they're not even good on the issues. If it were like, okay, look, the guy is intelligent. He's good on the issues. He just happens to be, what are you going to do? Pray for the guy. That would be one thing. But they're all neocons. They're all conservatarians. They're all liberals who are just like vaguely annoyed with leftism. Not even annoyed with anything left wing. It's like when you wanted, pepper at a restaurant, and then it's like, okay, well, that's too much pepper. You're like, well, I didn't want that much pepper. So I don't really care for this amount of it. They suck on the issues. It's the same ideas for the last 20 years. And then when they repackage that into their version of it, they just repeat that for the last however many years. It sucks, but it makes people feel less mean. Ha! Bet you won't call me a bigot now. Really, I would rather just win. I don't really care what communists think of me. I don't know why you do, but great. Okay, we're attracting people who suck on the issues. Sure, that'll help us finally become a serious movement, an organized movement with a serious volume of discourse surrounding it. Where's the appeal? Who's winning right now? We are such losers. You want to know how bad it is? We have lost so much ground that we can't even conserve the quality of our gay conservatives anymore. Remember Milo Yiannopoulos? Good on the issues, legitimately intelligent guy, very well-spoken, talented writer.
Is he any of those things? Oh my god.
And presenter, gave a college speaking tour with a title that I don't even think I can say the name of. Now we got a bunch of idiots. They're promoted because it's strategic, because of our Big Tent coalition. Look, I get it. I'm all for the Big Tent. I love the Big Tent. But I love it because it attracts more of our people, not stragglers from other tents who want to make a quick buck. There's several million of them. These types of people being promoted to the head of what we're trying to accomplish here does far more to normalize their behavior than it does to recruit. I've met a lot of these people. They're very nice people, but we're not here to make friends. We are here to achieve the win conditions. And those do not include the normalization of what was unthinkable to promote as recently as
I want to know a list of his win conditions and how many of them are horrifying.
A few years ago. If you want to live those lifestyles, ultimately, that's your decision. But what tends to happen is that we find out there's really no such thing as the private individual acting in the privacy of their own home, because wherever these people tend to get involved, whether it's education, media, politics, they can't seem to help themselves but make everything a little different. So do you want things to be normal again, or do you want to be called mean? That's literally the only question that Americans need to ask themselves. The truth is mean. It's harsh. It's not ideal. And the truth about surrogacy is that it's just the logical conclusion of feminism. It's the complete and total and ultimate empowerment of women. We've discussed the differences between men and women.
Women being empowered to do what they want with their bodies, the horror. Only men should be allowed to tell women what to do with their bodies.
And our understandings of those. So allow me to tie that now into a nice bow here to conclude. Let's go over how down bad the boys are right now. If a woman's only agency is really her sexuality, then why does that stop at having children?
Not only agency, but it is part of a person's agency. Someone's sexuality is a part of their agency. Correct. Men, women, non-binary people. Yes. Your choices, decisions, and what you do with your body sexually, with yourself or other people, or not, are all part of agency, just like every other decision you make. But it is not the end-all be-all. But it is, yes, part of agency because it's a thing that is yours, your body, your mind, and you get to decide what to do with it.
Women have been using sex. When I say sex, I mean that very broadly, because as we'll discuss.
Oh my god, is he going to get super I-word right here?
It's all a scale. It just depends on where they want to personally draw the line. But they all do it, Their beauty, their vivaciousness, sometimes even sex itself. All of that has been used by women to benefit themselves. Since there have been...
Oh my god, he's doing it. He's doing it.
Women. I'm not mad about that. That's
He's such a nice guy, too. And none of these women will date him. I wonder why.
Just what it is. So the reason that feminists hate children and childbearing isn't because of
feminists hate children.
What they represent in themselves. Maybe there is a component to it that they hate because it recalls the natural order, but it's because of the responsibility that those things impose upon women. If a woman's only agency is her sexuality, why would she draw...
It's not her only agency, John. No one said it was, other than you.
...the line at having children, so long as she's not responsible for them? What's incoherent about female empowerment and then selling your own child for money? Sounds pretty powerful to me. Being able to create a life...
You're not selling the child, and it's not hers. Again, with surrogacy, generally there will be an egg donor, and then if we're talking about two dads, one of them or both of them will donate sperm, which will then, be combined with the egg or eggs and then implanted. Like, genetically, the child is not hers. Like, I don't understand. Like, and I don't think that genetics make or break whether or not it's your kid, obviously, but that seems to be, like, what he's trying to do, so I'm confused. Is it the genes? Is it the act of, like, gestation itself that you think makes a parent? Like, what is it?
For the purpose of selling it or just killing it, that's a lot of power. Of course, it's evil.
Ashley One Up says, if only therapy could be mandatory. Just wanted to use that last of my bits. Enjoy. I really think we need to start doing some sort of, like, I don't know. We need emotional skills teaching in schools. Like, in kindergarten you get taught a lot of that stuff, like, hey, keep your hands to yourself. Like, that needs to continue more and more. Like, just teach people not to be shitty to each other, please. This is so bad.
Evil, but it's power. That's why so much of what is classified as empowerment we view to be exploitative and debased. Do they care? Probably not. Are they still miserable? Probably. Will they correct course?
John, what you don't understand is it doesn't matter if you find it empowering or not, because it's not about you. If someone else does something with their own body that they find empowering, great. You don't have to agree. It's not up to you. Just like there are things that I'm sure you find empowering to yourself that I would disagree with. That's life. Learn to live in a world with people who like different things than you, because there's like 8 billion people on the planet. Most people are not the same person. We're all very different. Please get used to it. Stop vomiting your hate on everyone else, because you got issues.
You see, I mean, we can't trust all of our narrators to be as reliable as us, gentlemen, especially if you don't have an internal monologue in a lot of cases. These are just the questions. I don't know. I said this at an event recently. I swear to God, I had a woman come up to me afterwards. There were a dozen guys watching who can confirm this. She was angry with me because I stated the fact that women will dress in certain ways to accentuate certain features because it makes them more attractive to men. And even if they say they do it for themselves or for other women, it's ridiculous, because the only reason attractiveness is a relevant concept is because we're sexual beings. They feel more confident because they know men find them more attractive. And they
That's not how people's brains work, though, John. Like, let me put it this way. You're assuming because there might be some sort of evolutionary reason people behave a certain way, that automatically means that that's their intent, when it isn't, if that makes sense. Like, it doesn't matter why someone is doing something, because that can be entirely disconnected from their mental reason for doing it, like their actual reason. Like, people's explanations for why they do something, you just trust them because someone knows themselves better than you do, if that makes sense. Like, it would be like trying to say someone becomes like a 3-star Michelin chef because, like, oh, human beings are evolutionarily programmed to enjoy food because it is necessary for their function. Like, in a very broad sense, you're right in that humans eat food because there is some sort of survival functioning there. But as we are not non-human animals, we have culture and sociology and, like, a sense of self and identity, beliefs and feelings that we can analyze and self-interpret. That's not how this works. Like, it doesn't matter why someone wants to feel pretty or dress nice. It's not for you if it is said it is not for you. Period. I don't understand how you can't get that. Like, you can try and justify some sort of biological reason for something all you want. It's irrelevant, because if someone says, I'm not doing this for you, then they're not doing it for you. Like, that's just what it is.
They can feel more attractive than other women, etc. So I said this. She comes up to me, she's all angry. She unzips her hoodie and takes it off. She's wearing leggings and a very low-cut tank top. I swear to God. She's like, what about this is sexualized? I was like, are you going to make me say it? Like, is this actually... And again, I'm not mad about this. These are just the way things are. Women...
See, man, this Cornet Vol says, women who know John, watch out. He never stops ranking you on his hot or not scale and will treat you accordingly.
Objectify themselves every day. It's just a question for them on where they want to draw the line. They dress a certain way. They wear a certain...
No. You're objectifying them. The act of objectification is something that is done to you, generally. Wearing something does not objectify you. Your perception of that and how you perceive that and think about it, that can do that. Citosaurus has a totally real situation that happened.
Style of makeup. They take endless photos of themselves, but then they'll get angry with other women for being immodest because her attempts to draw attention to herself and to her...
When? Who? Again, he makes up hypothetical people,
beauty,
or people he saw on the internet, and then uses that and says, all women are like this.
And to her features are like, what? Too obvious? Something like that? Maybe 10% more extreme? 20% more extreme? Whoa, easy. It's the same behavior, just at different scales. It's like a guy selling lemonade. You know, he's mad at the guy across the street for selling lemonade at a lower price. It's like, you guys are both selling lemonade. I don't know. What do you want from me? So I'm just being honest here. And again, you can't really get mad, you know? It's like, this is just women, all right? If you're getting mad at them, you've already lost. It's a skill issue. Well, no, John, you don't get it. These poor women, they've been brainwashed into thinking this is good for them. Are we sure? Are we sure about that? We're ignoring that there are at least two premises within that which are completely irrational. Let us consider the alternative hypothesis, which has held true for thousands of years, which is that the only thing that can really cultivate what we would regard to be modesty in women is a patriarchal, religious, and especially Christian society. When that goes away, things are always going to tend to head in this direction. And I'm not counter-signaling modesty, by the way. I'm not counter-signaling traditional sexual morality. I'm just observing that the reason that so much of the discourse surrounding these things is off the mark is because it's being led by women who are perfectly happy to participate in these types of things. When they find God, they make a Twitter account in their 30s, and then they shame the more attractive younger women for doing the same.
John, you're literally buying some tradwife TikToker who's lying to you. I would imagine that tradwife TikTokers who talk about, like, I regret my 20s, are probably the same kind of people who, like, pretend that they're ex-Satanists who are in the Church of Satan and then go to, like, evangelical churches and are like, I left that life, let me tell you all the stories about things, and it's just all made-up grifting.
same thing that they themselves were happy to do back then. And then I'm the villain for accurately describing their behavior. It's crazy. And people are going to get mad about this one. So be it. This was a big red pill for me. Do you ever think about why prostitution is still illegal? Is that just like the one hill that we're really good at holding for some reason? Hey, I mean, good for us. You know, I don't want to lose that hill. But if all the things that they're pushing on young men, marijuana, pornography, hedonism, displacement,
no one is pushing marijuana or porn on you, John.
Humiliation. Why have
porn has also existed pretty much as long as people have, so that's a weird thing to bring up.
they not moved in on prostitution? Isn't that weird? Like, do we actually have some political power? We're just focused.
John, there has been plenty of movement to try and decriminalize sex work. That is absolutely a thing.
All of it on that? Is there some secret lobby in Vegas working to preserve their monopoly on it? No, it's not the Vegas monopoly. It's because it preserves the female monopoly on sexual access. No, John, it's about human trafficking and STIs and evil. You really buy that? You believe that our government, which does the things that it does and enables the things that it enables and promotes the things that it promotes, you think that it simply decided to just do the right thing when it comes to prostitution? They got that one thing right. The reason prostitution is illegal, even though the left thinks it's empowering and they celebrate it, the reason that power in this country hasn't caught up to that,
I think that people being able to do what they want is empowering. There's fair discussions to be had about people feeling the need to do things because of financial desperation. But that's a broad topic in general anyway. Again, you don't get to decide what's empowering for someone else. Describing empowerment is a thing you feel about yourself. You cannot feel empowerment for someone else. You could, like, have some sort of, like, empathetic reaction and assume how they're feeling. But, like, if someone is empowered by something, you can't tell them that's not empowering, because we're literally describing their internal feeling when we're talking about this.
Feminism. It's because it preserves the female monopoly on sex, and it gives them even more power over men. Think about it. Go back a couple generations. Women weren't making money. Women had all these pressures put on them from their families and from their communities to get married young, whereas men were making money. They had pressure on them to get married too, sure, but not nearly like the pressures put on young women. It was a lot easier.
John, who do you think was marrying the women back then?
For men, average men, young men, to find a wife, to find a woman, and a lot of that was motivated by the male sexual impulse. Men have always been horny. So the question is, where is that impulse being channeled? Is
the fact that he thinks, again, Republicans don't think women get horny, and it is so funny, and they are telling on themselves so hard. Hip Escapism with a $5 tip says, situations that did not happen outside of my mind for 500, Alex. At least Mike, Warnke looked goofy. I don't know who that is.
Good? Something productive? Or is it just being wasted, just flushed down the drain because of screen whores? If men could go pay $100 and have sex with a hooker, I mean, that's disgusting. You don't know where that's been, how many diseases she has, what's going on there, but at least that's a real experience. At least you're in control.
John, in places where sex work is decriminalized, or at the very least where it is made legal, there are generally, like, mandatory testing in places where it's, like, a brothel situation. Like, I think in Reno, that's the rule, is basically it needs to take place inside a licensed brothel. And there's, like, testing and stuff, but you don't really care about any of the actual real-world considerations. You just want to be mad.
Control of that situation. You have the power in that situation. Doesn't make it right, does not make that a good idea, but at least you're in control of that. Maybe you're a slave to your desires. To get yourself into a situation like that, you probably have to be, but if you're already a slave to your desires, what's going to keep you in those shackles? Is it being assaulted 24 hours a day by pornography and e-girls, putting women on this pedestal, or is it going to have sex with a hooker and being like, that's the problem. We've elevated women to such a pedestal in our everyday lives. Men are debasing themselves for women. And I love women. I cherish women. Nobody has more respect for women than me. But in order to create a society that we want to live in, something approximating what we used to have in this country, men have to realize themselves. And they will never do that if they're being tugged along on a leash all day because of women. Because what do men do now for women? They debase themselves. They adopt viewpoints that aren't even theirs. They allow women to do whatever they want, to speak to them however they will. They're completely whipped, completely domesticated. They don't see their friends. They give up on their dreams, on their mission. Do you understand how many men adjust their everyday existence based upon access to women? It's weak behavior, and it's maintained by the female monopoly on sexual access. That keeps men domesticated and docile, which is why...
How soon until he just starts outright making manosphere videos? Because this is, like, so dipped in, like, quote-unquote red pill talking points. I did the Streamlabs donation from Hip Escapism. It said situations that did not happen outside of my mind for 500, Alex. I did that.
Our society has degraded into what it has because women have all the power. That doesn't mean they'll be happy, doesn't mean they'll even use it properly or understand that they have it, but they have it. And if men could just go pay $100 and get a hooker, that psychology would change. And I'm not saying any of this is good, by the way, but the male sexual impulse is real. It's going to go somewhere. And there's a reason that they're distracting you with a constant assault of screen whores, making consent contracts, putting you on dating apps where you have to beg for a message back. It's created a society of good little boys. Good little boys are boys who give their balls to women. And I'm not making an argument in favor of this. I'm simply telling you why.
John, I feel like you're trying to make the fact that, like, women have some amount of agency and you actually, as men, have to navigate women who have the bare minimum of rights is too insurmountable to you, and you're treating it as though it's some sort of dystopian Orwellian situation. You just don't like to have to interact with women and treat them like human beings. Because again, you're a bad guy. That's your problem.
It makes perfect sense that with all of the evil things that exist in our society, this is the one thing that's not being promoted. It would be confusing to me if I didn't understand this, because I would think, wait a minute, why are they
Again, John, there's discussion about like decriminalizing sex work all the time. It's not like the biggest topic at hand, unfortunately. Like there's so many topics to deal with. Right-wingers are attacking trans people a lot and, you know, LGBT people in general these days, so that's a pretty big topic that gets discussed. But I'd imagine at some point in the general national discourse, we will have a larger discussion about that. But there are discussions that already happen regularly about it, so.
all of this sexual degeneracy, but they're still arresting people for prostitution. That's so weird. It's not weird. What is more empowering for women than getting paid to have sex with you? Getting paid not even to have sex with you, but for you to, like, what, jerk off to them by yourself in your room? It's weak behavior. And don't worry, I'm consistent across the board as well. When me and my cool friends take power, we're going to arrest these people too. But it will be because we're restoring a male-dominated society instead of a female-dominated one.
He's literally just having, like, fan fiction where he and his friends we'll tell all those women who won't talk to us on Tinder that they have to now.
Male-dominated societies will put pornography on every screen and magazine in the country, but will arrest you and have you fined and fired for making the wrong comment about it. Stop objectifying us. That's why we've got surrogacy too. What could be more empowering for women than selling your baby? Sure, but what about purchasing a baby from another woman because you can't have one naturally? Maybe because you waited too long, you wanted to be a girl boss, whatever. That's sovereignty. You can do whatever you want. Don't get married, be a girl boss, but you still get to purchase a baby. It's complete female dominion. But I know people are going to get angry at this. Women can kill their children. They can sell their children. They can buy their children. That's power. Get angry at it. I don't care. That's power. And you, like a good little boy, say, well, it's not fair to women. Really, it's about the exploitation of women. Was I good, mommy? Because the conservative movement in this country is run by women, homosexuals, and worst of all, perhaps, men who are controlled by women, by their wives, whatever. So I can say this while loving and respecting women, which I do, because I understand that it is the responsibility.
John, no, you don't. You want women to be objects that have to do whatever you want. And you're treating it as though having to take other people's feelings and beliefs into consideration is somehow a burden on you. That's life. Grow up, bud. Grow the fuck up. Discordant Vol says, I don't know, John, this masturbatory fantasy is a lot weaker than the ones you're complaining about.
Ability of men to build and maintain and restore society. But in order for us to do that, we have to behave like men, be masculine. And if what is most masculine by definition...
John, if you think that being a man and the definition of it is not allowing women to have, like, agency and forcing women through threats in order to do whatever you want, then you're just a really scary person that should probably be in prison. Like, that's fucked up. Like, that's so fucked up. Like, that's a psychological condition that you need therapy for. That is not good.
Is what is least feminine, then we have to abandon political correctness and speak about things honestly without having to be held hostage by the emotions of people who may not like our tone, which is what I have just done. I don't blame women. I don't hold women responsible, really. It's our job, but that starts with abandoning this weak simp mindset, the simp mind virus, as it were, so we can actually protect our children and restore our country. Hey guys, if you like this video, leave it a thumbs up, leave it a comment, subscribe to the channel. Remember to leave a comment. I don't know if I'm going too fast for you. Also like the video, leave it a thumbs up. It's right there. You probably liked the video. If you made it this far, you liked the video. Why not reflect that through clicking? What's wrong with you? I haven't earned it. I've been up since, no, I'm not going to do that. I won't complain, but like the video. I'll wait. Remember teachers would do that? To subscribe, turn on post notifications so that you are notified in the event that I post, which is so frequently, and then of course, share the video with a friend. Everyone's going to want to see this. No one's going to get mad at this. Women aren't going to get mad at this. No one's going to get mad at this. Gay people are going to love it. Everyone's going to love it.
This has the energy of when, like, a comedian over 40, like, has a Netflix comedy special that's all about, like, they're trying to cancel me, and then it has that poster or whatever where they have, like, duct tape over their mouth. It has that same, like, I'm saying what they don't want me to say, but in reality, it's just like people like me in the corner laughing at you and being like, this is embarrassing, get your shit together. But they act like saying things other people disagree with is an own. It's very strange. It's very strange.
I'm just a normal guy with normal opinions, okay? The one thing that I'm going to get in trouble for, though, is John Doyle's making a case for prostitution. No, I'm not. I said I'm going to arrest these people, too, which I am. I am perfectly coherent on this. The left is perfectly coherent on this. It's the people in the middle who are like, wait, they both sound like you're making arguments in favor of prostitution. It's all the same. You don't get it. Rewatch the video. Rewind.
John, you're closer to getting your job back at Subway than you are to becoming a leader of anything, so maybe don't get ahead of yourself. Like, does he in his head really believe at any point he will have any position of power in a government? John, you have posted this shit all over the internet. You're nuts.
Go back. What? That way. Which way? Yeah, that way. Click that way. Rewatch. I did not say that. We just have to understand what the problem is, and we have to speak about it honestly. I'm sorry if you didn't like my tone. I really am. I didn't mean to, use that tone with you. I don't know. Merry Christmas. I don't think I'll see it. Well, I don't think you'll see me in our sort of relationship here as it stands. But yes, Merry Christmas. I will see you again before the new year. I hope you enjoy time with your family, with your friends. Yeah. Do I do the bobble thing? If it's his birthday, do I get like a special one? I gotta cut these outros. The 2-minute outro, folks. The videos are long, the outros are long. The periods between uploads are long. It is what it is. Trying to think of what else to say. We covered everything. I did have some other stuff, but a lot of that's going to go in the aforementioned dissertation. There were some things I would have liked to have explored in this conversation, but we just didn't get to it. So yeah, we will do that. We will do that. Okay, anyways, thank you so much for watching. May God...
To be fair, Project 2025 might give John power if it's implemented. No, it wouldn't. That's the funny thing. Even in a scenario where there was some sort of fascist takeover of the government, people like John would not do well. He thinks he would. He wouldn't.
God bless America. Have a very Merry Christmas. God bless you. God bless your family. We'll see you soon. Thank you. Good night.
Jesus Christ, that was painful. Here's a cat. It's gonna get in there. At least I'm thinking it will. I believe in him. Or her. Yeah. Fuck yeah. That was good.
Some non-binary history. This is Gluck. Just Gluck. No prefixes, no suffixes, no quotes. She was a British painter from the first half of the 20th century, and that's the name she chose for herself. As far as I can tell, everybody who was close to her used she, her pronouns for her, so that's what I'm going to do as well, but in every other sense, she rejects the gender binary. So she creates the name Gluck for herself out of a shortened version of her surname, and she is deadly serious about it. When the art society that she was vice president of put her name on their letterheads as Miss Gluck, she resigned. When her bank puts her name in the system as Miss H. Gluck, like, she goes down there and has a go at them. She's not afraid to threaten lawyers if you get her name wrong. She holds the door open for ladies, she gets her clothes from fancy men's tailoring places on Jermyn Street and St James's Street, and she has a series of affairs with women, the best known of whom is probably Nesta Oberma. Gluck paints this picture of them both together, that's Nesta in the background and Gluck in the foreground, which she calls their wedding portrait. When the painting's finished, Gluck writes to Nesta, "Now it is out, and to the rest of the universe I call beware, beware! We are not to be trifled with."
That was fun. All right, let's see who we're going to rate on Twitch before we call it a night. Marusama. We will rate Marusama. Love you too, Mr. Blast. All right. Have a wonderful night, everyone. Thanks for hanging out and dealing with John Doyle with me. I'm glad we got that out of the way. Tomorrow we might be continuing Pickup Artist. It's been a while since we continued that, so we'll probably do another few episodes of that. And yeah, should be good. I took some time off at the beginning of the month, because it was not only the beginning of the month, but the beginning of the year, but I am in work mode now, so I should be here the vast majority of days for the rest of the month. Excuse me, rest of the month. All sorts of topics. I look forward to it. So have a good night, everyone. And be cool. Bye.